Good morning. We're going to gavel into session in a moment, but before I do that, I want to acknowledge a distinguished guest that we have amongst us here today. We are honored by the presence of the Consul General of Ireland, Robert O'Driscoll, is here with us today. Consul General, would you please welcome us with a few words? We're honored to have you here today.
The Irish means nothing today. Free Ireland.
Thank you.
Great, you've incited something already. You just got here. Welcome to Portland City Council.
I see that you're joined today by Brendan O'Finn.
Yes, indeed. And I'm very thankful, obviously, to be here today. And thank you very much, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for giving me just a couple of minutes this morning. And I won't take too much more of your time. This is my first visit to Portland, and I came here with two purposes. One, I wanted to meet with the strong Irish community here and people of Irish heritage, to talk to them about, one, the strong heritage in this city. I want to learn more about it. I know, of course, that one of the very first mayors here in the city was Stephen J. McCormick, who took office in 1859 after only 8 years in this city. I only have 4 years of my term, so I'm not sure I'll reach the same level. But I want to talk about that. I wanted to learn more about that. I came here to talk about an Irish economy which has been through a massive recession, but has now come out the other side and is the fastest growing economy in Europe. A country which is more diverse and more accepting than ever after our marriage equality referendum in 2015, being the first country in the world to vote for marriage equality. And I wanted to speak to them also about Brexit, about the UK's decision to leave the EU and what that means for Ireland, and particularly what that means for relations between North and South and the Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to Ireland after a very troubled period of over 30 years of conflict. That was the first part. That was yesterday. Today, my focus is going to be on the future of Ireland's relationship here in Portland. I'm struck in the 5 months that I've been here at how deep the connections already are between Ireland and the West Coast, but also between on the potential of how we can do much more. And people say to me all the time, Robert, you need to go to Portland, you need to see what's happening up there, you need to see the vibrant startup scene, you need to go meet the people and see how more and more Irish businesses should be here and adding to the up to 100,000 jobs that Irish companies already support in the United States. And that's why I'm here today, and I'm going to meet Business Oregon later on today and to talk to them about how we can do a little bit more. And I hope maybe in Q1 next year to lead some more of our enterprise agencies up here to have those conversations and try and build those relations. So that's why I'm here today. I won't take any more of your time, but I want to thank you very much for having me here. And in Irish, we would say, at this time of the year, we would say, Nula Cumni Díobh, agus áit bhliain bhí bhaise díobh. It means Happy New Year, have a happy holidays. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, and thank you so much for being here. We're very appreciative. Thank you.
Why don't we have a sister city relationship with Ireland?
Well, we pretty much do. We have really close connections to both Dublin in the south and Belfast in the north, and we've led many delegations there and hosted many here. So while not an official sister city relationship, there's very, very strong connections economically and civically. So we're proud of that.
Good job. Very good.
Conor McGregor, UFC.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. This is the December 13th morning session of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaley?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Fish?
Here.
Saltzman? Wheeler?
Here. Colleagues, I'd like to suspend the rules and begin this morning's council session with remembrances for a great leader for this city and for this state, Vera Katz. Vera Katz was, as many people have noted this week, larger than life. In all the descriptions I've read of Vera Katz this week, there's one common theme, and that was that she was a force of nature, leading her community to new heights. She made an indelible impact on our state and our city over 4 decades in leadership, from the early 1970s to after the turn of the new millennium. Mayor Katz represented, in my mind, the very best of the American spirit. From when she had to flee Nazi oppressors in Germany, to her transformation from concerned citizen to fearless civic leader. Wherever she went, Mayor Katz seemed to break new ground, becoming Oregon's first female Speaker of the House, Portland's 3-term mayor, and changing the fabric of the life in this city in the process. All of us in public service can aspire to her boldness, her candor, and especially her humanity. On a personal level, I always felt privileged to attend school with her son, Jesse. And in my mind, I can't separate Mayor Katz from Vera Katz, the mom, the school mom. My heart goes out to her and to her son, Jesse, and to Mel Katz, and all of her many colleagues and many friends that she met along the way here during this very difficult time. It's extremely rare that someone as accomplished in public life makes a similar impact in their personal life. And as I read all of the memories that people have put forth this week, it's clear that she did both. Even people who said, you know, I didn't really like her politics, but then they would go on to talk about an encounter they had had with her, an experience that they had had with her, or some opportunity that they had shared together in the community. And it's obvious she made an impact on people at a very personal level. She'll be remembered as mayor, as a legislator, as a mother, and as a friend to many in our community. We'll all miss her greatly. And I want to say something else on a personal note. As I sit here in the chair that she sat in for all those many years, I know I'm not a Vera Katz, but she's put the path before me, and I aspire to lead the way that she led this city, and I believe I'm capable of that, and I know her somewhere. She's looking down on me, hoping that I live up to that expectation. Colleagues, Commissioner Fritz,
So,
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor, 2 quick stories. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was at the Knight Cancer Institute, where I spend about 7 hours every other week. And I had a little downtime, so I called Vera on my cell phone. And she answered, and she was heading to dialysis. And she had regular dialysis to deal with her health challenge. So we compared notes, and I had not spoken to Mayor Katz for some time, but she was as warm and funny, and I should say irascible as ever. And at the very end of the conversation, she said something to the effect of, "Did you call me to ask for money?" And I said, "No, Mayor, I'm calling just to tell you that I love you, and I was thinking about you since we both have a shared struggle." The story, though, Mayor, that I will never forget, and that is familiar to some of the folks in the room today, is the way Mayor Katz stepped up right after 9/11 to represent our city. Now, as many of you know, it was not a well-kept secret that she was phobic about flying in airplanes. And she would do anything not to have to fly in an airplane. She was fearful of flying. Well, right after 9/11, Show and Lowen DeZono organized a so-called Flight for Freedom, and 1,000 Oregonians went back to New York City. Well, not only did it require flying in an airplane, but it required flying in an airplane at a time just following the worst terrorist attack in our history. And I can assure you that a lot of planes weren't going into New York. So she had to overcome 2 significant concerns. But the sense was that you could not send a delegation of Oregonians without having Vera lead the delegation. So ultimately, she agreed to be the leader, and she flew to New York. And there was one moment that crystallized everything that I have come to know about this remarkable woman. There was a ceremony at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which is the magnificent seat of the Episcopal Church in the northern part of New York City, right next to Columbia University. And it had been designated as the northern morgue for any terrorist attack. So it was the place where bodies were to be taken in a serious attack. And every year they do something called the Blessing of the Animals. And it's a significant event, and it generates about 3,000 people who come. This year, the Blessing of the Animals was especially poignant because they invited, as the lead animals in the processional, the dogs that were down in Ground Zero looking for bodies. So they honored those dogs, those highly trained dogs that were seeking out survivors. Mayor Katz was asked to speak on behalf of Oregon at the ceremony. It was televised. There were 3,000 people in the cathedral. Judy Collins sang. But the speaker that preceded her was Bobby Kennedy Jr. And Vera was not aware that Bobby Kennedy Jr. was going to be on the program. And what made that extraordinary is she came into politics because of Bobby Kennedy. It was Bobby Kennedy's father who inspired her to get into politics. So for her to follow Bobby Kennedy Jr. at that moment. Well, Vera rose and stood facing 3,000 people in this enormous cathedral. And she told her story about coming to America as a Jewish refugee and all that she had endured. And I had never heard that story before. And as many of us know, she wasn't someone who was comfortable talking about herself in that way. She would not share those kinds of stories. Well, it turned out that when she came to New York as a refugee, she lived in a tenement right across the street from the cathedral. But she had never been in the cathedral because she never found it a welcoming place for a Jewish person. So here she was all these years later speaking in the cathedral. And she told her story, and then she got very emotional. And she offered the love and support of all of Oregon for the victims of 9/11. We all have our personal highlight reels of moments with Vera Katz, but I've never been prouder of her as a leader representing our city. And it made an indelible impression on the people of New York to have this feisty mayor get up and offer solace when it was needed. So I will never forget that and all that she did for our city, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fritz?
Thanks, Mayor. I started my political awareness in Portland in 1991. So for the first 12 years of coming to this hall as a community activist, there was Mayor Katz being the leader, the person with Gretchen Kafori who was directing policy for the city of Portland. And it wasn't until later that I realized how few women have been on the Portland City Council. That was the normal thing for me. And she was a great role model for that. Two things I particularly remember are, one, she never learned to drive. She was the archetypical Portlanders, just used TriMet and loved it like I do, although I can drive. And secondly, people sometimes say that we have a weak mayor system in Portland. You think of Vera Katz, that is not a weak mayor, that was a strong mayor.
Very good. I usually give a long statement about...
Oh, one more thing, Mayor, sorry.
Yes, please.
The mayor has had a condolence book placed in the lobby downstairs, so if anybody would like to send a message to the family, somebody did that for me in 2014, and it was really helpful to me, so I encourage you to write your own remembrances down there.
Very good. And alternatively, if people want to send an email, I'll make sure that they get forwarded to the family. Ordinarily, we talk about conduct. I don't think we need to do that today. I think everybody knows the basics. Treat everybody with respect. You'll hear differences of opinion at the microphone. That's okay. First issue is communications. Please call the first item.
Item 1317, request of Joseph Walsh to address council regarding impacts of illegal camping. This was the other Joseph Walsh show. Okay.
Good morning, sir. We're glad to have you.
Good morning. Mayor Wheeler, members of the council. Great to be here in the friendly confines of the council chambers. It's been 30-plus years since I was here as a city employee. Again, I'm Joe Walsh. I reside at 4035 Southeast Oak and have for more than 40 years. I'm a member of the Laurelhurst Neighborhood Association and their safety committee, but I'm here as an individual. I'm also a member of a informal group of neighbors and small businesses that's coalescing around this issue of illegal camping. So you can expect to see us here regularly on Wednesdays sharing stories of what we see out on the streets. I want to remind you of three things that you probably already know but need to be talked about on a regular basis. First of all, the extent of this illegal camping in Portland is disgraceful and dangerous. Second, the city's response is far too ad hoc. It's better than nothing, but it's still not up to what it needs to be. Third, the city and its partners, county and ODOT and others, simply have to do better. No one that I talk to, no one has the least interest in criminalizing homelessness, harassing the homeless, and claiming otherwise really is a distraction from the real issue at hand, which we think is the enabling of a lawless subculture on public property. So the extent there is a tremendous groundswell, obviously, of discontent over the increase in property crime, the health hazards. I've got a packet here with 28 stories from folks all over the east side that we gathered just in a couple of days by word of mouth, so you can go through those. In my case, I'm very concerned about these health and livability aspects, but in my own particular case, as a person in long-term recovery from drugs and alcohol, somebody who devotes his time in retirement to the treatment world, I'm talking to folks with a lot more training and experience than I. They're unanimous. For folks in their addiction with mental illness, this is not compassion. For folks who combine their addiction and the mental illness with criminality, it's enabling and it's dangerous. As to the ad hoc nature of the response, a longtime local government employee, more than 10 years with the city of Portland, like-minded folks in our neighborhood association, we spent 6 months trying to get a concerted response to camping on the fringes of Laurelhurst Park. Imagine how hard it is for folks who don't have those kind of resources and the kind of savvy with a Rolodex or whatever the current version of a Rolodex is to know who to call and to be persistent. So, but once the Bureau folks got on the same page, police, parks, and PDOT, at the district level, on the ground level, they did a great job. And they also understand and articulate that this is an intolerable situation. They hate seeing their city and their city facilities so ill-used. Third point, we've got to do better. All right, I'm out of time. We have, in this packet is a safe zone, a model ordinance, a safe zone ordinance that will allow the city to designate parks, schools, and playgrounds as no camping areas, as in we really mean it this time. So please go through this, and as I mentioned, we'll be back Wednesday after Wednesday talking about this issue. Thank you for your time.
Very good. I appreciate it. And if you're going to be back Wednesday after Wednesday, let me also tell you what would be helpful for us to hear. Because as you know, we are pursuing a comprehensive response around homelessness. This administration, along with the county, has never invested more in prevention, rent assistance, emergency shelter, housing strategies, addiction, mental health treatment on that side of the spectrum, nor has there been a more concerted effort in recent years around what I'm describing as livability issues, enforcing codes, ensuring safety, addressing public health and public safety concerns, environmental concerns. If there is more that you think we should be doing that is not part of that spectrum of services, I'd like to know specifically what. I have this meeting 10 times a day where people tell me they see the trash, they see the litter, they have the anecdotal evidence of criminality, but then they never say, what I need them to say, which is, what do you want us to do about it that we're not already doing? Are we right track? Are we the wrong track? And remember, it has to be legal and it has to be constitutional. But I'm always open to suggestions.
Better coordination among the city. I'm a long veteran of these silos that exist in our commission form of government. There was good news in your op-ed about these resources. People at the front lines don't know about this, they aren't seeing it. We'll dig into, we can work with your office, figure out where these resources are, where they need to be going.
Good. Good. And one moment, Commissioner. Speaking of silos, when I took office, there's a lot of landholders here. The city, the county, TriMet, ODOT, Union Pacific Railroad. There's lots of different organizations and entities that have different rules. We're under the Anderson Agreement, ODOT's under the Carr Agreement, and for the first time we're actually coordinating and trying to find compassionate and effective responses simultaneously. So I feel that's improving. It's not where I'd like to see it yet, but I acknowledge that silo impact.
More communication about these efforts, the ability to get in and find out what's going on. And again, the issue here is a very small subset of folks who are, in my anecdotal experience, choose this mode. It works for them. It needs to not work anymore.
Yeah, and I look forward to furthering the dialogue, and I appreciate your presence. Commissioner Fritz, thanks.
Well, just the further question that I would have for future dialogue, if we were to designate some places where people could not live outside, we would also need to decide where they could, because there are not places, there's not, except in emergency, enough shelter for everybody overnight.
Right.
So that's,
all right.
thank you.
Thank you.
To be continued.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing too. The mayor has a website with a single point of contact, and
we use it and abuse it.
Have you seen the reporting on what has been done, what is due to be done?
We're following. We're on a ad hoc basis. We're following it, but there is not, and maybe we can learn about where we can see the big picture, where the dashboard is.
If you check the front page of my website, I'll make sure that's there. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 1318, request of Jim Atwood to address council regarding unreinforced masonry mandatory seismic upgrade plan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You have brought props with you.
We brought props.
Excellent.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Dean Aldrich. I'm a lawyer with Aldrich Ike Construction Law Office here in downtown, located at 621 Southwest Morrison, Suite 1050, 97205. Thanks for the opportunity to present today. I'm here today presenting on behalf of J.A. Atwood Corporation. Jim Atwood is here with me. Early next year, you'll be receiving a recommendation from the Unreinforced Masonry, that's URM, Building Policy Committee. The committee is expecting to issue a final report soon. We don't have one yet. Although there are still unknowns, which is a problem, the committee appears to be scrapping the existing regulatory policy in Title 24, which requires seismic upgrades only when there is a change in use or sufficient improvements to a building, in favor of a mandatory or forced seismic upgrade. Even if the URM has not changed its use or being otherwise improved, and even if those URM buildings are not critical facilities, schools, or public assembly spaces, this kind of catch-all, URM buildings are known as Class 3 under the policy, the new policy. This mandatory or forced seismic upgrade policy, especially for these Class 3 buildings, causes more problems than it solves. Here are 5 examples. The real costs of the mandatory or forced seismic upgrades were not properly analyzed by the committee. The committee estimated the compliance costs were $20 to $69 a square foot, and this was based on unpublished local anecdotal information for some information and then FEMA standards for the rest. Now, when we look at an actual example of the Glade Hotel, which is in the heart of Old Town, we see the problem. The Glade Hotel underwent a PDC DOS study in 2015, and the cost of the seismic upgrades was $334 a square foot. That's approximately $1.88 million divided by 5,225 square feet, and the building's only worth $940,000. as the first reason is this failure to analyze the cost. The second is there's no viable funding option to pay for the upgrades. There's a Senate Bill 311 which provides some offsets by abating property tax for 15 years. For the Glade, that basically is about 5% of the cost. Permit cost deferment may also be available. That's insignificant. And with these property tax abatement and the permit deferment, I mean, somebody probably needs that property tax money and permit fees to pay for government services, which may be a better use than this mandatory seismic upgrades. Number three, the policy eliminates owner rights, abilities, and choices regarding development of their property. Number four, the committee appears to be locked into forcing some new complex and costly regulatory scheme with details to be determined to justify its work. Number five, the retroactive application of regulations to existing buildings invite numerous legal challenges. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the city or the council reject the forced mandatory seismic upgrades and send it back for further study under the existing policy and using some actual examples like the Glade Hotel. We do have the numbers of the Glade Hotel have been passed out.
So Mayor, can I just?
Commissioner Fish. Yeah.
So thank you, by the way, for this pro forma. And just so, because not everyone's going to be able to see this, the takeaway that you want us to see from this is that if you compare the replacement value of the building, I mean, in other words, demolishing it and replacing it, versus complying with this new URM mandate, this shows, according to your numbers, that it would be cheaper just to replace the building, and the cost is, from your point of view, cost prohibitive. So you're asking us to go back and look at these kinds of buildings to make sure we're not actually encouraging demolition. Is that a fair comment?
That is a fair comment.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up question as well? There has been compromise after compromise on the recommended strategy. It was originally under Tier 3. There actually wasn't a Tier 3 initially, and it was a fairly prescriptive regulatory framework. And having met with a number of small building owners in particular, like the one that you have a photograph of right there, the Glade Hotel, which, by the way, is a beautiful building, we backed off considerably while maintaining what we would thought were the critical life and safety elements, so cornices, parapets, and chimneys. Is that all that is reflected here in your pro forma?
No, it's, if you look at the hard costs, I tried to break them down based on the DOS survey. So we got, you know, kind of the Tier 1, the parapets and the roof work, and then the wall work is secondary. One of the problems is trying to analyze as the numbers change and as the policy changes, what happens to an existing building like this, right. Which is, I think, where the main criticism is how do these apply to actual buildings that are going to be impacted by it?
Yeah, and we're you know, we will go through a lengthy public hearing process on this, but I want to be very clear where the current baseline is parapets, chimneys, and cornices. And just by way of a preview of coming attractions around this subject, I actually believe the market's going to take care of some of the rest, because as the probability of a catastrophic earthquake increases, the value of buildings that aren't seismically upgraded are going to go down, possibly precipitously, and the ability to insure those facilities is also going to go down precipitously, regardless of what we do here. So there's a give and there's a take. I'm trying to find the right balance. I would never ordinarily quote Ed Koch, but I will do it just this once. When he chose to close the Williamsburg Bridge, which was hugely controversial because it needed an upgrade for this very reason, he was being yelled at and screamed at, and the press was shouting questions, and he said, listen, at the end of the day, I'd rather that people be inconvenienced and safe than convenienced and dead. And we're talking about a catastrophic earthquake. That's sort of what we're talking about. So, but I agree with Commissioner Fish. I love the pro forma because now we have some real numbers that we can talk about. I appreciate your taking the time and the energy to, and the money that you invested to do this, and it's a good place for us to build the discussion from. So thank you both for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
Next individual, please.
Item 1319, request of Ambassador Margaret Hepzibah to address council regarding racism, judicial accountability, housing, and finance.
Good morning, Ambassador. Welcome.
Pardon me?
Welcome.
Ambassador Margaret?
Welcome, Ambassador
It's nice
Margaret.
to meet you, Mayor.
It's wonderful to meet
Wheeler. I
you.
know I only have 3 minutes, so I don't want to be derided here. Let's see here, and it's Hepzibah, Carla, not Hepzibah, but let's see here, and I don't mean to be snide. I have a bit of anger, and I think anger is an emotion. As long as we don't do anything ridiculous from our anger, then it is an emotion, and there are very critical issues and heated things that we have to do with, and I think that's why we're all here, usually anyway, right? So very emotional and or harmful or not things. So, all right, so I'm trying to see how I can quickly do this. It's nice to finally hear you and see you, Mayor. I am an ambassador of God, which means, and a lot of people don't know that, the churches do not kind of preach structure of authority in the church. Very nice to hear you speak. You're definitely very intelligent, and I feel you're confident to do your work. So,
Thank you.
But let's see here. So, Ambassador, I speak the voice of God. Okay, it's not me, it's not my persona or anything, and I have goodwill. So I have goodwill, but there's a lot of serious things going on. My son was killed here by the KKK. I'm currently homeless. I'm being stalked and attacked every day by KKK, as well as my own brethren, okay, which for some reason want to throw me in jail and keep throwing up in the face of God and his voice. That they want to have their way and God can't. And so I think I'm going to carry that to the last part of your mention with this last earthquake, seismic considerations. Most geologists or some part of that science world they are now saying that human behavior is related and connected, linked somehow with ecological disasters. And so these things are happening, and I would just say to all the council, hi, Commissioner Fritz, that these things are happening instantly. I've had someone literally shave my hair off while I was asleep. That's why I have to put all this in. And the next day, a flood happened where that person came from, the flooding in Texas. All kinds of things, and people can deny and blah, 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 but, you know, it gets redundant after a while, you know, and so, and again, I have goodwill, I love you all, they don't love me. So that's just, that's my role. That's kind of a ambassador, prophet, apostle. So, and speaking to the UK and Ireland and their scenario with the EU and Italy and their terrible earthquakes and the basilica down to the ground, stones just amazing. I've had a charcoal etching of the basilica all my life. So anyway, let's see here. I want to say something here quickly, and then, so KKK abolishment and my, what I was going to say, racism, spiritual occult behavior, and it goes into the homeless scenario as well. I want to mention the Christian institutions like Mercy Corps, Red Cross, as well as where I am, the Harbor Light Salvation Army, run by people hanging skeletons and signs of Satan from their ceiling in their offices. Why is that? And they're supposed to be Christian. I put myself on the line of sleeping in my car now, and I vowed to say that. How can these people get funding? And yeah, I'm talking about money, because when you rob God, you're going to have cursings. You're going to have ecological judgments. You can't listen to the voice of God daily. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up soon.
Okay,
Good.
so what I'd like to say is this homelessness scenario, I'd like to be a part of that. As far as Ku Klux Klan is concerned, again, I'm not saying war against them. I would like to see that entity as criminalized. Their behaviors are criminal.
Very good.
And
Thank you.
last thing, if I might. So here, I just want to read this, 2 Chronicles 13, 11, and 12. okay? And this is going to the brethren here. So we're talking about not just the word, but the power to save our city. We're talking national security and city safety from
All
ISIS.
right, Ambassador
Okay.
Margaret, last comment here.
So, and they burn unto the Lord every morning and every evening burnt sacrifices and sweet incense. The showbread also set they in order upon a pure table, not a mixed Wicca Christian church, and the candlestick of gold with lamps thereof to burn every evening, for we keep the charge of the Lord our God, but ye have forsaken him, the person. We're not worshiping matter.
Okay,
Matter's the problem. Last
thank you.
thing.
Thank you.
Verse 12, and behold, God himself is with us for our captain, and his priests with sounding trumpets to cry alarm against you, O children of Israel.
Thank you.
Fight ye not against the Lord God of your fathers. for
Thank you,
shall not
Ambassador Margaret.
prosper.
We appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
So what I'm requesting, Mayor Student, City Council Mayor, what I'm requesting, Mayor Wheeler, is a sit-down. I don't need 3 minutes just to come talk and show. I need to sit down and talk about some of these critical issues.
Happy to do it outside of council session. Very good.
Torture.
Good. I'm happy to do that outside of council session. We're on a schedule here. Next
Item
individual, please.
1320, request of Sarah Hobbs to address council regarding need to do better concerning Portland's rising rate of suicide.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Sarah Hobbs, and having spent the past year and a half on my suicide prevention work, partnering directly with city suicide first responders, there are a number of issues that I hear constantly that I feel need to be addressed. One is, it's not our problem, go to the county, especially when it comes to the issue of addressing our high rate of high-risk suicide as it pertains to Portland Bridges. So seeking information, I spoke to somebody at Peabody and learned some interesting things that some genuinely surprised me when it came to where bridge jurisdiction within the city of Portland lies. Any bridge that is a connector to a state road falls under ODOT jurisdiction. That is the St. John's Bridge, the Markham Bridge, the Fremont Bridge, and the Ross Island Bridge. The Steel Bridge is privately owned by the Union Pacific Railroad Corporation and is their responsibility. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Main Line Bridge, just south of the St. John's Bridge, is the responsibility of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Rail Corporation. The remaining 7 bridges that go over the river are the county's responsibility, but the Portland Bureau of Transportation has a jurisdiction over 155 bridges, referred to as neighborhood bridges. The most well-known of these bridges that Peabody has jurisdiction of, because of its horrible reputation of 90 years as Portland's suicide bridge, is the Vista Bridge. As well, when we say it is just the county's responsibility, we don't acknowledge how suicide is responded to within the city. And I would like to tell you a story about a suicide response that happened this past June at the St. John's Bridge. A 20-year-old young man in crisis made his way to the bridge on his cell phone, called his mother, who lived out of state, to say goodbye. How his father was able to connect with the Portland Bureau of Emergency Communication, I'm not sure, just that he did. Police dispatch immediately sent officers from the Portland Police Bureau's Behavioral Health Unit and Enhanced Crisis Intervention Team. They took one look at what was happening. They declared extreme high risk, sent it to the crisis negotiation team, and by the time all was in place, we had Bureau of Emergency Communications, Portland Police Enhanced Crisis Intervention Team, crisis negotiators.
Thank you, sir.
And Portland Fire and Rescue. I know we're in a hurry because we're delayed because of the tribute earlier, but it's city employees outside of the county river patrol. Please, if you're not going to take it seriously for the people suffering, take it seriously for the city employees you are responsible.
Point well
Ms.
made.
Hobb, I'm sorry, Mayor, I need to ask the
Commissioner.
question. What was
You
the
bet.
outcome after the response?
This is one time we could say what happened was the young man in crisis said he would come down if the crisis negotiator from the crisis negotiation team was there to meet him and hug him. And he was.
Oh.
And they got him down.
Thank you.
But I
We need
see
to
the
have that more often,
trauma that
don't we?
happens to first responders when also as well when they complete. So please, for
Thank
the
you,
sake
Sarah.
of the people, you have the commitment to take this seriously.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Sarah. It's my understanding that item 1329 has been pulled from the consent.
We still have one more communication.
I'm sorry?
One more communication title.
Go ahead and read it.
1321, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding the use of Guantanamo Bay white torture tactics on October 11.
I don't see him here. I understand there's one item that's been pulled from the consent agenda, 1329. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. And could you please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda?
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted.
Mayor, I do have staff here for the pulled item. We can do it in 5 minutes or less.
So we have a lot of people here for this time certain. Can we do the first time certain and then shift to that?
It's up to the mayor.
Is that acceptable? Very good. Let's do item 1322. Please call it.
2017 Steve Lowenstein Trust Award.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor, before I begin, I'd like to welcome our honored guest today, a dear friend and former Steve Lowenstein Board Chair, Michelle Harper, and current Board Chair, Joe Hertzberg. Michelle, are you going to bring all four? Yeah. And they're going to bring two honored guests forward.
While we get situated, I'll fill this silence by saying, along with lots of City Hall stories, one of my favorite memories of Vera Katz is, as a neighbor, she was the first person I ever saw who followed her dog with a plastic bag and picked up its poop, and I thought she was absolutely nuts.
Great story.
So,
Mayor, colleagues, this prestigious award is named for attorney, author, and civil rights activist Steve Lowenstein. Steve was the founding director of Oregon Legal Services. He was a Peace Corps volunteer. He was an advocate for social justice. He also worked in this building as the chief of staff to former Commissioner Mike Lindberg. Steve wrote that the recipient of the Trust Award, quote, shall be that person or persons who demonstrated the greatest contribution to assisting the poor and the underprivileged in the city of Portland, Oregon. Today, the board has selected two great and deeply respected leaders in our community, and I'll turn it over to the board chair.
thanks. I'm Joe Hertzberg. I'm the current chair of the Lowenstein Trust Board, and Michelle Harper, who's next to me, I thought was chair for life, but somehow she was able to pass the baton to me. Nick's given a summary of Steve's life, which really was almost like fiction. I mean, he started working in the Kennedy administration as a young lawyer in the early days of the war on poverty, worked with the Ford Foundation in Ethiopia and Chile, founded Oregon Legal Services and the Oregon Law Foundation, and wrote the definitive history of Jews in Oregon. He was Mike Lindberg's chief of staff for 6 years, and he was part of a generation of leaders that shaped this city. Vera Katz was one of them. Mike was certainly one of them, along with people like Charles Jordan, Neil Goldschmidt, Bud Clark. They all knew and trusted Steve as a straight shooter, a consensus builder, and a passionate advocate for the disadvantaged. More than 25 years after his death, his influence is still felt here. I think every one of you has people in senior leadership positions in your bureaus that consider Steve to be a mentor and a role model. This is the 26th time that we've come to City Council to make this award, and it's the most humbling thing that I do every year, because we solicit nominations and learn about people who are making unbelievable contributions to this city, most of them unsung. Our two honorees today join a distinguished and select group of local heroes. I just want to see, I think that a couple of them may be here today, along with board members of the trust, if they could stand up and just.
Mariah?
David. And I want to say the one person.
We're going to, Joe, excuse me, we're going to do a photograph afterwards.
Yeah. The one person who is both a past honoree and a member of the board had to leave for an emergency. Mark Jolin was received the Steve Lowenstein Award a few years ago and has been on the board for some time. Michelle is going to tell you about this year's honorees.
Good morning. Michelle Harper, past board chair of Steve Lowenstein Trust. Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council. It is a great honor to present these two gentlemen to you this morning. This is the best of Portland, to be able to celebrate with you this morning that Reverend Dr. T. Allen Bethel and Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes to bring you these nominees this morning. They were nominated by Faye Birch and Dr. Carmen Thompson, and also Senator Averill Gordley, that put together a pretty compelling nomination for them to give them this award. We're honoring two extraordinary and unconventional leaders who just happen to be best friends. Individually, they have achieved remarkable things that are just overwhelming. But together, they are a very powerful force to be reckoned with. They have moved mountains in many areas of social justice. Their faith drives their compassion and opens their heart to help many, many people. In their presence, you cannot help but come away with and not be changed by their wisdom and their experience. It causes you to examine yourself and be moved to action. I'd like to introduce these gentlemen to you today. Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes, place of birth Beaumont, Texas, has a daughter and grandchild. Bachelor's degree with honors from the University of North Texas in Denton, master's degree of theology with honors in social ethics from Southern Methodist University, Dallas, Texas, and the Perkins School of Theology. Doctor of Ministry from Texas Christian University and Bright Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. Postdoctoral studies at Boston University and Pastoral Excellence Program, Boston, Massachusetts. And he just happens to be my pastor that I'm proud of. His career: chaplain and professor of religion at Southern University of New Orleans, Louisiana, dean of and chapel of profession of religion in Texas College in Tyler, Texas, pastoral experience serving as senior pastor in Beaumont, Texas, Fort Worth, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Presently serves as the senior pastor at Allen Temple CME Church and presiding elder for the states of Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Emeritus president for the North Portland Bible College and Evangelical Christian College in Portland, as well as past chair of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. Dr. Bethel has served as senior pastor at Maranatha for more than 23 years, having served in churches in Boston and Kansas City. He attended Bay Ridge Christian College and received a BA of Theology from Kansas City College and Master's of Religion from South Hamilton. Dr. Bethel serves as the National Association of Church of God in West Middlesex, Pennsylvania. The longtime executive, 14 years as secretary and treasurer, currently as the chairman of Leadership of Ministry. He's also the president of the Albina Ministerial Alliance, along with Dr. Haynes. And so what I will say to you today about these two gentlemen that have done such an amazing body of work that has shaped the fabric of our city. whether it is police reform, social justice, housing, feeding the homeless, clothing, finding people jobs. You know, the foundation of the African American Church has been the place where we go, where we've had our rights denied. So the church, African American Church, has always been the foundation of everything that we need to survive. And that continues today. So even though these leaders have extraordinary organizations that they lead, they still have it in their hearts to be leaders for the city and for the state in more ways than can be counted. The current police reforms that are now underway and being discussed are as a result of these two gentlemen. There are so many, I could give you a laundry list of the number of things that they have accomplished. That is just extraordinary. It gives me a great honor and pleasure to bring these two before you this morning. In the challenging times that we live in right now, where some people are feeling rather hopeless, the best thing I can tell you, if I believed you with something, is that they are the light. They are the light, and they're leading us the way we should go. At this time, I would turn it over to Dr. Bethel and Dr. Haynes.
For the record, I'm Dr. T. Allen Bethel, Senior Pastor, Maranatha Church, Portland, Oregon. To Mayor and all of our commissioners and to the Lowenstein Trust, it is indeed a pleasure and an honor to receive such a recognition today for something that I do almost naturally. I was born January 31st, I won't give you the year, about 8-something at night in a segregated hospital in Columbia, South Carolina. It's now known as the Richland Memorial Hospital, where my aunt was the first African-American or colored nurse to be in that particular hospital. Raised in the rural section of that capital city on a dirt road with many instances and experiences of segregation. To be able to rise through and go to a segregated high school and then eventually into a desegregated high school and graduate, to be the only second of my family to graduate from high school, to go on and be the only one in my family of siblings to attend college and to graduate and to go to where I am today. This little country boy has come off those dirty dirt roads, gone many places, seen many things. But above all, I must go back and I just want to refer to 2 songs that will just sum up where and I believe what is my life and why I am doing the things that I have done to support the people in Portland and any place that I have been, to make the fabric of life better for us all. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a calling to fulfill. I do believe that there is a calling upon my life to serve God with everything that I have. And a part of that serving is to serve that people in mankind will be able to walk around free, not only in a spiritual sense, but to have the freedom of life to live in the city, free, clear, safe, as brothers and sisters together. And secondly, I would conclude that what I am trying to do, as I said earlier this week, is to just quote this other little song, just a part of it. If I can help somebody as I travel along this way, if I can help somebody with a song or a word, then my living shall not be in vain. So all of what I'm trying to do is to help somebody to have a better life as I travel along this world. Travel along this road. Put your hand in my hand, and together we can. Thank you so much again for such a prestigious honor. Thank you.
Dr. Haynes, try to beat that.
To our illustrious mayor and distinguished members of this great city council, the City of Roses, Commissioner Fish, Commissioner Fritz and Commissioner Udaley. I am the very Dr. Leroy Haynes Jr. I am deeply honored and humbled to be the recipient of the Steve Lowenstein Trust Award. This award and many of its past recipients represent a commitment to the service of humanity, this city, and the idea of freedom, justice, and equality. At an early age, at the age of 13, my pastor was Dr. Martin Luther King, lieutenant in Southeast Texas for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I became a son of the freedom movement at the age of 13, going to jail every other 2 weeks to break down the walls of segregation in our city, experienced our church being bombed by the Ku Klux Klan because of our church being the headquarters. It was at that age, as a teenager, I made a commitment to the movement for humanity, of freedom, justice, and equality, and democracy in our country. That has led me into SCLC and SNCC, and eventually into the ministry itself. I, like many others, I stand on the shoulders of the many that have died with their blood, sweat, and tears in the civil rights movement to make this nation a greater nation, to bring out the best of humanity in our nation. And I am delighted and have been delighted to be a part of this city, and that it was actually Mayor Cass that engaged me into city government and politics in my coming here, and nurtured me, and I serve as one of her counselors. But we have a great city here, and we're committed to bringing the best out of Portland and to building the best. Mayor Cass was one of those leaders that if it didn't work, she was going to fix it. If it means getting a new chief, a new policy, or whatever they need, she was going to keep fixing it until it got done. In that same spirit, we want the best for our city. We want to create a model city for our nation, a model police department, a model housing, a model healthcare, a model city that will speak to the humanity of our citizen. And in the words of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, we desire to create the beloved community, a community where people will feel human, that where they'll feel free, that they'll feel just, that they'll feel equal, and that they will feel inclusive. This is my life legacy and my commitment to this city and to humanity. Thank you.
Here to have comments?
Let's come down here.
Are we going to have comments afterwards?
Yes, and they're going to make the presentation.
It is my honor to present the Steve Lowenstein Award to Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes for service to the poor and underprivileged for the city of Portland, the year 2017.
Hooray.
same thing to Reverend Dr. T. Allen Bethel. The Steve Lowenstein Award is presented to Reverend Dr. T. Allen Bethel for service to the poor and underprivileged in the city of Portland, 2017. And these do come with a check as well.
So just to put a finer point on that, it's $7,500 shared by both gentlemen. From the
Lunch.
Now, before we go, could all the other recipients that are here please stand? The council would like to just respond if we could. Could we go back to the table for one moment? Thank you, John.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. Thank you for what you've done for me as well as what you've done for our city. Because you took and live for and work for justice, not only in police reform, but in so many other areas of people's lives and in ways that matter. And you are both rare in that you speak the words for justice and the truth and things that can hurt a lot because they are true. And yet in a way that is inspiring and makes me want to do better, makes me want to find out what needs to be fixed in, as you mentioned, Doctor. And also, you bring the words of beauty and of peace and of inspiration in always respecting the institutions, respecting people's right to be heard, in some ways respecting people's right to not necessarily have understood everything right away, and yet you persist. And so thank you for what you've done for me and for our city. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
Dr. Haynes, Dr. Bethel, it's been a pleasure to get to know both of you and an honor to get to work with you on some of our shared issues and values. And I also deeply appreciate the perspective you bring, especially in moments where I'm feeling tired and discouraged and like this road has been too long, because you've been on it a little bit longer than me. And you just both give me hope and inspiration. And congratulations. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just want to do a special shout out to Michelle and Joe and the whole Lowenstein Trust Board. This is a true labor of love, and it's really become one of the favorite and cherished events here at Council every year to honor the life and legacy of Steve Lowenstein through people in our community making a difference today. Two quick comments. Dr. Bethel, you cited a psalm. My dad, just before he died, asked that the words of that psalm be placed on his tombstone. And so the words that are inscribed are, "If I can help somebody, then my life shall not be in vain." And those are words to live by, and thank you for that. And then, Dr. Haynes, thank you for saying we're a great city. I think we have allowed a toxic environment at the national level to undermine our confidence as a city. And we're not going to make the kind of progress that you've challenged us to make unless we truly believe we can be a model and a great city. worthy of what you have set out as the marker. So let us aspire to be a great city, and let's reject the negativity that has become, I think, the standard and the norm in our culture. Thank you both. It's an honor to call you brothers and friends.
Thank you.
Well, I'll chime in as well. Reverend Doctors Bethel and Haynes, I can't tell you how important your leadership has been and in helping my administration getting its footing under it. We came in obviously with the DOJ settlement agreement, and both of you gentlemen have rolled up your sleeves and gotten down into the nitty-gritty of that, and I appreciate your patience and your leadership and the time commitment that both of you have put into that process. And I always feel when I'm hearing you speak that there's a refrain between the lines in what you're saying. And that refrain that I hear is a very optimistic refrain. And it's one that calls on us to achieve something greater and be something bigger than our own selves, or even to not be mired down in these times or think about just the short-term issues that we're confronting. We've had our disagreements on the minutiae of the settlement agreement, but I always keep coming back to the reality that we have two incredible, giant leaders in the both of you here in this community. And I think it's great that the two of you are friends. I always think of you together, and you come as a pair. And there's a little part of me, and maybe this is the part of me I shouldn't speak of, that always wonders, what were you guys like when you were young? I bet you were a couple of troublemakers, weren't you? And now I look at you, and I think all of us are inspired by the many, many years of leadership that you've given us. And you know, here's to many, many more. I hope we come back again and again and again and have these conversations. So thank you both, and congratulations, gentlemen. And thank you to everybody who's been involved with the Lowenstein Foundation for making this possible. I think it's really important, as Commissioner Fish just alluded to, for us to take a deep breath every once in a while and to pause and to be grateful for what we have in this community and who we have in this community. And gentlemen, you represent the very best of who and what we have in this community. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
So colleagues, what I'd like to do as we move forward, I'd like to get to the item that Commissioner Fritz has already agreed will take less than 5 minutes on the consent agenda, and that was item 1329. And then, colleagues, I'd like to get to Sergeant Barnum for item 1338. He has a very short time frame here, so I'd like to move that into the next slot after that, if you would not mind. And so with that, Carla, if you could read item 1329, please.
Okay, 1329, authorize a restructure of the temporary loan terms between the Portland Capital Improvement Fund and the Gulf Fund for Colwood Golf Course improvements.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. The staff's going to give a very brief presentation, and then we'd like to find out who pulled it and whether we can respond to any concerns. So I have Eileen Argentina, the Recreation Manager for Portland Parks
Joe
and
Walsh
Recreation.
pulled this.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Eileen Argentina, I'm the Recreation Services Manager. With me here today is Todd Melton, and he's going to share a little bit of information about the item before you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Todd Melton. I'm a financial analyst for Portland Parks and Rec, and part of my job is to work with the Golf Enterprise Fund, among other things. This item, Council originally approved a loan from our SDC fund to redevelop the
System Development Charge.
Systems Development Charge, sorry. To redevelop Colwood Golf Course in North Portland. Originally, and the amount approved was up to $1.5 million. Originally stated in the resolution was that we would pay back the loan in 5 equal installments. We are requesting to amend the resolution to allow us to restructure the payments in order to allow us to realize the anticipated increase in revenues that will allow us to make the payments in a little more affordable manner. This request is to allow us to pay interest on the first 3 years and then a graduated portion of the principal back in the next 6 for a total of 9 years.
Thank you, that's fine.
Thank you.
We'll just have you stay in case there's something to respond to.
Joe, did you want to speak to this?
My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We have a problem extending the loan. My understanding is this loan was supposed to be paid off on a certain date, and now you're extending it to something like 2029. Is that correct? The paperwork that I read, that's the implication, that you're extending the loan payments. And at least when I take loans out, if you extend the loan, it's going to cost you a lot more. So I don't know why we're doing that. The second part of our objection is the whole concept of golf courses when we have people dying on our streets. So we weigh them on the scale of justice. If you kind of image that, on one side we have golf courses, which is very elitism. I mean, it's the height of elitism. The majority of people do not play golf. We have a very select group that does. So we look at it as all of this land on a golf course going to waste. That's the way we look at it. And periodically, you have people running around hitting a little white ball in a hole. And then they do it so well, they go on to another hole and hit it again. On the other side of the scale, we have people dying. And we have this loan on a golf course, on a city. Why are we doing that? Why does the city even own golf courses? If it was such a great idea, private industry would eat it up. It's not a good idea. It's a waste of land because it's so intensive. I mean, you have 350 yards in each hole times 18. And I'm not good at math. I'm not going to do the math on that. But it's miles of land, acres upon acres. And meanwhile, you have a company complaining that people are in their driveway, in their hallway, and you have a golf course going to do nothing except guys, mostly guys, hitting little white balls into a hole and picking it up and going to the next one. Duh. Think about that. So that's my objection to it. It isn't an objection to Parks and Recreation. I know this. You're very protective of your territory, Amanda. But this is ridiculous. And someday people will start to realize it, that it is just ridiculous. And I know I'm over time, but you've been very generous with everybody today. So be generous with an old guy.
Thank you. Did you want to respond?
I'd like to respond,
Commissioner
actually.
Fritz, sorry.
The Golf Fund is an enterprise fund. It raises funds that can only be that have been dedicated to the purpose. Colwood is actually one of the reasons for the restructure is that it's being used as a community centre. The golf clubhouse is opposite. It's opposite the street from Thomas Cully Park, And so what's happening is that the community there is patronizing the clubhouse as a place to have weddings and other gatherings. And that's as intended. And we expect that over time, that will become profitable and serve many purposes, not only the open space and natural habitat on golf courses. So it's because we are not charging enormous fees for the use of that facility because of the neighborhood where it's located in, it turns out that we need slightly longer to repay the system development charges. System development charges for parks cannot be used for other purposes. They cannot be used for housing people or anything else by state law. So this is really a very simple thing that says we're not going to use general fund resources to pay the debt. We're going to make sure that the golf fund repays the debt.
Commissioner Fritz, can I also just add from my Bureau's perspective, the Columbia Slough bisects Colwood, and not only does the comprehensive plan place a premium on protecting the slough and the sensitive wetlands there, but it also puts a premium on protecting open space, something the Cully neighbors fought for. And so the compromise was worked out to keep a portion of Colwood open and a portion to be developed. But it is at the heart of our open space inventory. And if we do start talking about converting it for some other purpose, we'll actually potentially be out of compliance with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for reminding everybody about that, Commissioner Fish, because yes, the northern part of Colwood has been converted to industrial land, very much needed for providing good jobs.
And by the way, I just say this personally, not that it matters. I'm not much of a golf fan, but the only reason I watch golf is because of Tiger Woods. And he changed the game, and I watched him. But just as Portland Parks and Rec offers tennis and offers mountain biking and hiking and basketball and all kinds of sports, we also have an enterprise business that offers golf. Will the demographics of the golf playing public over time make that a sport that is less viable? Time will tell. But let me assure you that our first impulse should not be to take open space and necessarily develop it, because that is almost the equivalent of a park in the middle of certain neighborhoods in our city, and people would be very upset if we took away their open space. So thank you.
Call the roll.
Can I answer?
No. Call the roll.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution's adopted.
Trumpy strikes again.
Thank you.
And could we please move to item 1338, please?
And then we're going back to time certain.
Yeah, then we'll go back to the...
Authorize
A lot
application.
of backed up people on concerts.
Authorize application and accept a grant in the amount of $75,057 and appropriate $60,000 for fiscal year 2017-18 from Oregon Impacts Driving Under the Influence High Visibility Enforcement Program for sworn overtime reimbursement.
So, colleagues, as you know, this is a grant program that reimburses the city of Portland for the traffic division's direct enforcement that's focused on reducing impaired driving and improving traffic safety. I think we're all aware that there have been a number of high-profile pedestrian deaths in our city of late, and this is one of the programs that is specifically targeted towards reducing those kinds of conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians. And we have Sergeant Barnum here this morning to share a few highlights of the program. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you very much for your time. This grant is provided to the Portland Police Bureau through Oregon Impact, which is a community group based out of Clackamas County. They've been providing this grant to the city of Portland and other municipalities throughout the state for well over 15 years, to my knowledge. And year to year, we find that this grant really serves the city very well. Just case in point, last year, on grant overtime funds that we had with officers working, we arrested and took 201 impaired drivers off the road, which are both alcohol and marijuana impaired drivers, drug impaired drivers. That's 19% of the total custodies that we had, the total arrests that we had for the whole city that were not a part of the grant. Altogether, our total statistics for the year on impaired driver arrests were over 1,000, almost 1,100 drivers were arrested in the city of Portland. What this equates to is 1,100 people who had the opportunity to maim, kill, or injure our community members in our city. This grant really does provide a viable community livability issue, which where we're at right now, trying to reach the goal of Vision Zero by 2025. We really do need these funds. We monitor these funds closely to make sure that our officers are not being overworked. We coordinate with some what we call high visibility enforcement times, which we actually have one that starts this Friday. So as a part of the grant, there are a few specifics that we have to work in order to be in grant compliance, and one of those is a high visibility enforcement through the Christmas and New Year's season, which starts beginning on the 15th of this month. Overall, this will provide over 1,000 patrol hours at no cost to the city, so I can't help but to think that it's a benefit for our community members.
Very good. Any further questions on this item? Commissioner Fritz, did you have a question?
Just more of a comment that being aware that we have in the past had a challenge with racial profiling and with people of color being disproportionately stopped. I hope that there will be some kind of mindfulness as these patrols are sent out to just bring that to attention, because some of these biases are almost subconscious. And I just want to make sure that everybody is safe this holiday season.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any public testimony on this item, Carla?
One person signed up, Shedrick Wilkins.
Come on up, sir.
Yes, I am Shedrick Wilkins, and I think it was a year ago I took the unpopular viewpoint about in cases where there's a crash of a car that the driver be, and an ambulance shows up, that they should be of a mandatory blood test. So also I think it's important to find out where people are getting a lot of alcohol and drinking around. So some of this information or the increased use of the police to pull people over, we'll find out which restaurants or bars are letting people out, you know, and stuff like that. So I get some statistics there. And again, I really think that impaired driving, there's an illusion too. I think I drink beer, and when you, the first hour you drink beer, it peps up your brain and you feel good, which enhances skills. But then after about an hour, you tank, and you're not awake and you're not alert. So alcohol is tricky, because again, it's like a stimulant at first. You're relaxed, and then it hits you, and then you're just dangerous to everybody.
Thank you. Any further questions? Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Yeah, another thought that occurs to me in response to Mr. Wilkins' question is I don't know if we've ever coordinated between the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement's Liquor Control Section and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission and enforcement efforts like this. So I'm sorry I didn't ask you that before you had an opportunity to respond, but it's certainly an area where we should be doing a lot of wraparound thinking so that we do keep people safe. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thanks very much, Sergeant. Appreciate it.
And Commissioner Fritz, just so you know, we do partner with OLCC, and when we do have these problem establishments, that's a part of the document, part of the written report. So that's all captured by OLCC. So if there is some action to be taken about somebody being overserved by a particular establishment, there is some focused attention and a collaboration between the Portland Police Bureau and OLCC.
Thank you. I really appreciate you putting that
You're
into
welcome.
the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, we're doing a little bit of agenda rodeo this morning to accommodate people's schedules. We're going to start with 1324-1. That's the 4/5 agenda. Carla?
Presentation by Portland State University Institute on Aging on creating a community, on building a community for all ages, age-friendly Portland initiative.
Colleagues, December 15th marks the 50th anniversary of the Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act, sometimes known as ADEA. The ADEA protects applicants and employees 40 years of age and older from discrimination on the basis of hiring, promotion, discharge, compensation, or terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. It's an important policy to promoting an age-friendly nation. When I think about us building as a community, I reflect on my dedication to building Portland as a community for all ages. We must engage people of all ages, socially, civically, and economically. Older adults are a renewable and largely untapped resource, our only growing natural resource, I would argue. And in Portland, we're working to maximize their skills and talents through our Age-Friendly Portland initiative, which has been recognized both nationally and internationally. I believe that age-friendly cities will be more desirable, more successful, and economically more viable than those cities that are not. Portland can and should continue to be a leader in the global age, and the Friendly Cities movement is an important part of that. We need organizations and individuals, both young and old, and everybody in between, working together. We can build a community that truly is a place for people of all ages. Commissioner Nick Fish has had a long-standing commitment to this issue and has long been a supporter of our age-friendly initiatives here at the City of Portland. Commissioner Fish, would you like to say a few words to kick us off?
Well, I think in the interest of time, let's invite our honored guests forward and just say that I'm proud to live in a city that uses as one of its organizing principles the idea that we are welcoming and accessible to people of all ages and abilities. And that's reflected in everything from Harper's Playground, a place for young and old to enjoy, to how we build our buildings, organize our parks, our walkways, our trails, how we think about our economy. And we are blessed to have very strong partners here in the city. It's sort of a perfect storm. We have a mayor who, as county chair, took the lead in looking at how we capitalize on being a center for older adults. We have partners at Elders in Action, AARP, Portland State University, at the county and the state, and in many other places who are working together very collaboratively to think about how we capitalize on this advantage of being a destination place for older adults. And as someone who is recently, who will soon turn 59, I'm thinking more and more about these issues, about an age-friendly city. And anyway, I'm pleased that we have this alignment between leadership on the council, leadership in the community, and that we have a council that's willing to invest in this important work. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for your good work.
Very good. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Margaret Neal. I'm from Portland State University Institute on Aging, and along with Alan De La Torre, co-coordinator of the Age-Friendly Advisory Council. What we want to do today is just run through a progress report of our activities over the last year. But before I start, I'd like to ask the members in the audience who are part of our community partners, who are members of our community partners, to just raise their hands at least so we can acknowledge them.
All right, welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
So Portland is now a member, and has been for several years, of the World Health Organization's network of age-friendly cities and communities. There are 541 members of this global network, 37 countries representing 179 million different people, and there are 13 affiliated programs, including the Canadian program and AARP in the US, and there are 194 members in the AARP network of age-friendly cities. So an age-friendly community is one that's livable and friendly for people of all ages and abilities. And what we're doing through this initiative is trying to sharpen Portland's approach to livability, specifically looking at the physical environment, the social cultural environment, as well as the service environment, which includes health services and communication. In terms of our timeline, we've been at this for some time. We began in 2006, and Commissioner Fritz will remember that. She was our initial champion of this effort. The World Health Organization asked us to participate in its global age-friendly cities research project to identify what makes a city age-friendly, what are barriers to age-friendliness, and what suggestions people had for change. So that's now a number of years ago. In 2011 and 12, Portland joined the brand newly created WHO Global Network of Age-Friendly Cities. In 2013, the action plan for an age-friendly Portland was developed by our advisory council and ratified, approved here by City Council. In 2014, Multnomah County joined the Global Network and the U.S. AARP network. And then from 2016 to present, we've had a great deal of support from the city for our action plan implementation. To date, although we have 10 areas of focus in our action plan, we have 5 working committees. It's essentially a volunteer effort. And we began with civic engagement, our working committee on that. We have employment and the economy, health services, prevention and equity, housing, and transportation. Those are our 5 working committees. And essentially what we're doing through this effort is bringing together community partners to align their various efforts. If you look at the diagram below, you can see that each individual organization makes an important but isolated impacts. When we can align the efforts of the different organizations, we can accomplish so much more. So this is essentially a collective impact approach. It provides a structure so that we can get our organizations together and make decisions together about how to move the Age-Friendly Action Plan forward. The Advisory Council adds value and an identity to the efforts related to older adults in our region through our age-friendly label, through local, national, and international networking, through public engagement and community storytelling, and through gathering of data and conducting research to inform local policies. So our action plan, as I said, was accepted in 2013 by City Council via resolution, and its goal was to inform City Council and city bureaus in the course of decision-making related to long-term planning and capital improvement in the city. And the resolution directed the Advisory Council to oversee and monitor the implementation of the action plan. So I'll turn it over now to Alan De La Torre to talk about highlights from our last year.
Yeah. Mayor Wheeler, City Council, thank you very much for this opportunity to present. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Deborah Stein for helping us in compiling the annual report. She did a great job of maybe stripping a little of the academic out of us and getting something that was more concise.
I was just noticing that. Well done for reeling her in.
Thanks,
Former leader of the Portland Planning and Sustainability Bureau. This is excellent.
Exactly.
Thank you. Well done.
I think it highlights some of the growing partnerships and kind of fine-tuning some of our efforts. I'd also like to thank the liaisons from each of your offices that have been working with us, in particular Jamie Dunphy and Michelle Planbeck, who've been meeting with us and really guiding us to be more effective in this effort. So I'm going to quickly touch on some of the highlights from the report. So first, with respect to physical environments, we really have focused on advocacy and consultation, and I want to highlight the work really that marches back all the way to the Portland Plan, but has come to a head with the comprehensive plan and the projects that have emerged from there in the residential infill project and Better Housing by Design. We really have had an opportunity to draft what is innovative policy that's being looked at from other places in the world, in the U.S. in particular. We're sharing some of that right now with Seattle. They're interested in kind of what we're doing and how we're moving forward the concept of visitability, which is a basic accessibility concept with zero-step entrances, wide halls and doors for people in mobility devices, and a bathroom on the ground floor that can be used by somebody in a mobility device. We've also been enhancing mobility options through the Neighbor Walks program with AARP, working with Vision Zero and the Adaptive Bike program as well. Also, with BPS, have been working on a more inclusive public outreach component, doing some focus group research with end users of homes, as well as designers and developers to try to get multiple perspectives on how to accomplish certain things. And I want to note here with respect to the physical environment, just
a call out to Suzanne Stahl, who passed away last month. Suzanne Stahl, I worked with her for more than 7 years in the Accessibility and the Built Environment Committee through the Portland Commission on Disability. She was a strong advocate and a leader in the area of accessible environments, and we'll miss her dearly. I know that there's an opportunity we're looking for to honor her, but this seemed an appropriate place to do that.
Thank you for doing so.
I'd like to move on to social environments and really highlight one major thing that just occurred in October. We held our 2017 Aging Well Conference, which had over 200 attendees. We focused on community resilience, but we moved beyond the idea of just emergency preparedness as a component of resilience and looked at housing and healthy housing, including a session on feng shui and aging, which was the first time that we had seen something like that presented. Looked at conflict resolution. There was a great opening plenary on stories of resilience and the day-to-day experiences that people were carrying out. And about 2/3 of the folks who were involved expressed interest in continuing to be involved in some way, shape, or form. With respect to service environments, I think it's incredibly important to highlight that we launched this fall our new website, also trying to clean things up, streamline processes, provide people with important information so we don't have to answer those interesting calls and emails we get all the time to say, how has Portland done this? Or what's the story? We really feel like the new logo is actually quite good. Thanks to Multnomah County for that free consultation and work. I want to highlight a couple of other service-related issues. We've been working with the Water Bureau on affordability and crisis vouchers. Appreciate Commissioner Fish in reaching out to us on those issues. Have been training community health workers who are really frontline workers with communities on age-specific approaches, and are increasing involvement and advocacy opportunities throughout the community. So opportunities that are ahead. We would like to continue to be on the leading edge, but are recognizing that we've fallen behind with respect to some of the work that's happening in other communities. Investments from different municipalities, including things like statewide efforts that are starting to be underway, are things that we'd love to be able to explore. We really have the need to continue to implement the action plan that was accepted in 2013. We've made solid progress on housing accessibility, healthy aging, communication and information, but we're primed to advance employment in the economy as the ADEA proclamation mentioned today, as well as transportation and civic engagement. But there's substantial work to be done with respect to inclusion and equity, understanding community services, and also housing options that may be available for older adults and people of all ages and abilities. I think that's important to note. This is not just about people over a certain age, but really thinking more inclusively about our community. We would also really like to find out ways this year to work more closely with bureaus and offices in the city. We found success at most of those efforts, and so if we can use the beginning of 2018 to figure out how to be more effective and to align more appropriately, that would be incredible. And we would love to suggest exploring an age-friendly position within government and to see if that's something that could move this forward differently and more holistically. Just a couple of ideas for cross-organizational synergies. We are exploring an age-smart employer award that would maximize opportunities pertaining to an aging workforce, which is happening in government as well as other organizations in the community, and would love to start exploring what this age filter, this is kind of an idea right now. We don't want to recreate the equity lens in the city, but to find out how an age filter or age equity may complement what's happening. And then, as I'm sure Barbara Bernstein, the Executive Director for Elders in Action, will talk about, really trying to enhance involvement. They've got an exciting new series called Civics 101. I'm wondering if I can sign up for that, actually. I want to leave just with the last slide here to read a quick quote. What we do now to make our communities good places to grow up and grow old will yield returns not only for today's elders, but also tomorrow's. That is, for all of us. And I really think that this resonates with folks to say this initiative is about older adults, people with disabilities, mothers and parents with strollers, folks on their bikes, and everyone in between. So for folks who are wanting more information, please visit agefriendlyportland.org, and I'd like to turn it over to our colleague and collaborator, Barbara Bernstein.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for giving me this opportunity to talk about. Move closer?
So just move it closer.
Okay. Thank you. To talk about volunteerism and how it's integral to this movement and to the community's health and well-being. As we know, studies know, and as we know instinctively, volunteerism has all sorts of benefits for aging well. It improves health and well-being, it provides meaning and purpose, it creates opportunities for physical activity, for intergenerational activity, it reduces depression, it reduces isolation. It creates an opportunity for a transition from work structures to volunteer structures that maintain social networks. And it provides all sorts of benefits to the community that older adult volunteers are serving. In effect, I'm going to say that volunteerism is the secret to aging well. At Elders in Action, we have about 10,000 volunteer hours logged every year. And if you translate that into a financial number, it's about $200,000 that the city is leveraging through your support of Elders in Action. And if you multiply that across all the volunteer activities that are happening throughout the city, you can see how volunteerism and civic engagement are integral to how this city evolves, or what's the word?
How it works.
Works. Okay, thank you. And I do want to bring up, however, that times are changing. We've added 30 years to the lifespan in our memory, and that means that work, life is changing, work volunteerism is changing. People are living into their 80s and 90s, and that will challenge how we do public policy and how we think about volunteerism and civic engagement. Many adults are living on limited incomes. In a time of reduced wages and disappearance of pensions, older adults are having to think about how they will make limited means stretch. Also,
can I just put one statistic in the record that I think I heard from one of you? Every day in this country, 10,000 people age 65 or older retire, and less than half of them have retirement savings of $10,000. So when you think about it, it's a ticking time bomb of a demographic wave of people that are going to be retiring without the resources to fund their retirement. And then, they're going to have housing needs, healthcare needs, all kinds of needs. And it's in Oregon, it's around the country. And just think about that statistic and how staggering that is.
Thank you. And when you think about the answers to the questions, volunteerism is one way. When you ask us to reach out to diverse communities, to link them to resources in the community, we do that with volunteers. When you ask us to work with the Water Bureau, we do that with volunteers. And you bring up a point about the home share program. That revitalization is a really amazing answer to one of the challenges that you just articulated. And we did that advocacy with volunteers. Additionally, as civic and faith community membership shrinks, then there are fewer places for that civic engagement and volunteerism ethic to evolve and to be nurtured. And volunteerism has been a part of our community and this country, but it's not a given. It really needs to be supported, nurtured, and cultivated. And so the question for us can be, what are we doing in the schools? I'm really proud to live in a city that has a bureau dedicated to involvement, civic involvement, and it's called the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. I think of it as the Office of Community Engagement, but that support is just incredible to the nurturance and maintenance of the structures that allow older adults to be engaged in our community. So in a time of change, I want to say thank you to that support. The volunteerism and the civic engagement of our community is essential to the health and well-being of our city, and it's what makes this city an age-friendly city. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And with that, I'd like to read the proclamation. Whereas December 15th, 2017 marks the 50th anniversary of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, ADEA, enacted by the United States Congress to protect individuals 40 and over from discrimination in employment on the basis of age. And whereas the City of Portland recognizes that no one should be denied work or should lose work based on assumptions or stereotypes related to age, and whereas the Portland City Council, the Age-Friendly Portland and Multnomah County Initiative, and community partners such as Elders in Action, Venture Portland, AARP Oregon, and Portland State University are committed to a shared vision of Portland that is welcoming and inclusive to people of all ages and abilities. And whereas recruiting and retaining older adults in the workforce as employees, mentors, and business owners can create more economic opportunity and livable communities. And whereas age-friendly communities flourish when people of all ages contribute their knowledge and skills, experiences, time, respect, and services. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, the mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, here do by proclaim December 2017 to be the 50th anniversary of the Age Discrimination Employment Act of 1967 in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this month. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we get a photo up front here, Commissioner? Right here. There. Joyce, come over here. Joyce, you should be Joyce. You bet. Dean, how are you?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'll do flash. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Then she does all the Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations. Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Thanks. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Ben.
Everything legal so far?
Nice to meet you.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Good job. All right, we're going to do the pub report next, 1324, please.
Accept Portland Utility Board Annual Report.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, we welcome two honored guests today, Colleen Johnson and Alan Warman, co-chairs of the Portland Utility Board. This is their second annual report to Council. As my colleagues will remember, in 2014, the city charged a Blue Ribbon Commission with improving oversight of our public utilities. The Blue Ribbon Commission ultimately recommended a new committee, citizen-led, called the Portland Utility Board, to replace 3 existing oversight bodies. In its second year, the Portland Utility Board provided extensive input on the Bureau's budgets and informed policy positions in areas such as the BES strategic plan, the disposition of Terminal 1, and water quality. This report includes an overview of the board's activities for fiscal year 2016 to 2017 and some goals for the next year. Alan and Colleen, thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Alan Warman. I'm the co-chair of the Public Utility Board.
And I'm Colleen Johnson, co-chair.
As advocates for the citizens of Portland, the pub members need a broad understanding of utility management, bureau operations, and the city's budget process, which in some cases is difficult. In our second year for the pub, we've dedicated, the members that is, have dedicated over 450 hours of service. We have held 14 board meetings, 8 subcommittee meetings, off-site tours at the Bull Run Watershed, Portland Water Pollution Control Lab, and the Columbia Boulevard Wastewater Treatment Plant.
What we wanted to do was to give you some highlights of the report that you have, and I'm sure you've all read thoroughly at bedtime. So the first issue is communications to council. As part of its role as the Budget Advisory Committee for both bureaus, PUB submitted its initial observations of the fiscal year 17-18 requests. We also provided comments on the final decision packages and a supplemental letter on the request for 2 BES staff that were added late in the process. Over the past year, PUB has been developing a more robust process to review the requested changes in the budget monitoring process. This year, we have allocated time during the regular board meetings for all members to participate. This fall, we provided you with our concerns about the expectations for non-general fund bureaus during budget adjustments and articulated 5 principles we felt would be useful guides for evaluating mid-year changes to the budgets of these bureaus. Those 5 principles are: technical changes and requests for unanticipated or emergency needs would be expected requests in the bump process. Staffing should be part of an annual prioritization discussion. Bureaus should use management techniques to prioritize new needs and reallocate existing resources mid-cycle. Bureaus should refrain from building internal capacity for central service needs. And finally, approved requests for new resources should be coupled with metrics and communications of outcomes. Finally, other policy considerations come before the board. As Commissioner Fish mentioned, for fiscal year 16-17, this included the disposition of Terminal 1 and cryptosporidium, and for the current year, the board has discussed the hydroelectric power contracts, water quality issues, and filtration, and we have provided you with our concerns and recommendations for those issues.
We're very interested in making sure our public involvement is expansive. We've established a website that includes all of our public meetings, agendas, minutes, bureau presentations, and all 5 members, or many of the board, 5 members, have participated in 11 administrative review committee hearings for the bureaus. 4 members also stepped out into the community and went to 5 community meetings that were specifically there to talk about filtration. For the current year, PUB is committed to gathering further outreach. We're also trying to beef up our website to be more public-friendly.
In the area of challenges and opportunities, PUB spent the year working with the bureaus as they updated their strategic planning processes to allow for PUB input earlier in the planning and design phases. As the recently approved filtration treatment illustrated, PUB and the bureaus can improve public outreach and education on large-scale processes. We appreciate the Mayor and Commissioner Fish's request for the bureaus to prioritize their budget requests. For PUB to provide meaningful input to the City Council, we need to ask the bureaus for information on the relative priorities of bureau requests, as well as how choices to not fund activities will affect service level and performance of the bureaus. As chairs, we feel this prioritization of projects assists the bureau management to manage their budget in light of scarce resources, and will also facilitate a public discussion on the value and benefits of utility investments at varying costs to the residents of Portland. In our second year, PUB began working to address more complex recommendations by addressing real and perceived issues of public concern and trust, improving transparency, communication, and education, working with City Council to adopt new standards of practice regarding utility oversight and providing for strong and consistent public involvement in decision-making, viewing the Bureau's activities with an eye towards innovation and cost-effectiveness, and thoughtful consideration of the investment requirements and policies that may be appropriate and necessary to retain high bond ratings for both bureaus. PUB has, in order to do all this, PUB has reserved a second meeting time during the month to allow for greater reflection and discussion of issues, and staff have institutionalized a process for better information flow between PUB and the bureaus. And finally, the board saw improvement over the last year in the opportunity for PUB input in the city's deliberations and will continue to work with the bureaus and the council to refine that process.
Going forward, the proposed fiscal year 17-18 work plan, it's basically designed to help the bureaus integrate the PUB into their workflow. This is sort of changing cultures a little bit, but it's the right way to go. And this includes getting us involved in the strategic planning, the capital improvement budgeting, and the operational budget process. In an effort to increase our efficiency, PUB has identified 8 key areas for engagement for the coming year. Number 1, equity. 2, public and community engagement. 3, regulatory compliance. 4, strategic planning. 5, green infrastructures. 6, operational efficiency. 7 is resilience. And 8 is emergency preparedness and inter-bureau coordination. This is in addition to our regular part of being involved with the budget process. So looking forward, the PUB understands both bureaus have a concern for aging assets. With that said, the Water Bureau faces a number of costly programs. The Willamette Park, the Willamette Crossing, I meant to say the Washington Park, and the Willamette Crossing, and now a treatment plant. We believe the Bureau's management team needs to apply budget constraints in light of these major projects and their financial future. BES now has a strategic plan in place and will need to apply their plan to continue to make wise and strategic decisions for a cost-effective future. We both say thank you for your time, and please enjoy our annual report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, a couple comments?
Please, Commissioner Fish.
This got moved a couple of times, and then we kept you waiting. So apologies for that, because this is a lot of great work. And the bureaus that I have the honor of leading have reviewed this very carefully. I've read it. I need to ask you 2 questions. I need to just highlight 3 things. Are you getting all the staff support you need to be able to perform the functions that you've been assigned?
I would say yes. You're well aware both bureaus have cultures, and I think they're changing to bring in the PUB as a third party to help the process going forward.
Okay.
And could I add, internally, our staff, we have had great help from our staff support, Melissa, and also from Shannon, who is with the CBO and does the analysis for the bureau. So
good. And by the way, that was one of the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission that stood in stark contrast to the frustration of other citizen-led bodies that felt like they were given a mission without the staff support. Mm-hmm. So you have dedicated staff support that's funded. And I'm glad to hear that you're getting what you need. Yep.
And just a reminder about that, those staff are located within the city budget office.
Correct.
So they're in the office that reports to all of us, and I'm glad to hear that you're getting good service from them.
And the second question, are you, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but from the bureau director, from the leadership point, are you getting the kind of cooperation you need going into this season where this will be your first year in which, from soup to nuts, you're involved in reviewing the budget and in providing guidance to the city? Are you getting the kind of high-level buy-in from leadership that you need to be successful?
I believe we are. I think, as I repeat this, we're going from a set of bureaus that have not had the integration of citizen input, and so that culture takes a while to change slowly. And I think both directors are helping that process go forward.
And
Good.
could I add to that? We had a meeting, I think it was last week, for the preliminary operating budgets for both bureaus. And the difference in the detail and in the narrative that they provided us from over last year was enormous. And so they put, and it quite clearly showed, they put in an amazing amount of work in bringing those preliminary budgets to us.
I'd like to compliment you for a moment. You mentioned community engagement and neighborhood involvement. It was really at your request that particularly the Water Bureau went out and talked about the filtration proposals or the various options for complying with LT2. And they took those to coalition meetings and actually got very interesting feedback. And so that will become more institutionalized in terms of big ticket issues going out to the neighborhoods. And that's something that you challenged us to do, and I want to thank you for that. The final thing, and I also want to thank you for the leadership you provide on the low-income discount program. We've gotten a lot of community feedback on that, and you've been working to help us crack the nut, and I know we have some exciting announcements to make in the new year. The one other thing I just want to clarify, and do so with the mayor here, in case he disagrees with what I'm about to say. When the mayor was providing his budget guidance this year, he had conversations with his colleagues. And because there is a possibility that we're going to have a shortfall on the general fund, and also because I think this mayor believes that a forced choice exercise is good for general fund bureaus to identify what's core and what isn't, he has asked people to plan for a scenario where you could have up to 5% cuts. My own view is it's highly unlikely we'll have to take 5% cuts, but he has said, do that, and in the process, help us understand what's fundamental and what you could live without. It's what we call a modified zero-based budgeting. Sure. It's not zero-based budgeting because we don't take it down to the studs. When it came to the utilities, the mayor did not make that same request. Instead, the mayor said that, and my guidance echoed this, said that we should continue to look for a combined rate increase as under 5% with the goal of getting as close to 4% as possible. And the reason, and I had conversations with the mayor about this, the reason that we chose not to go further than that is that the council has already spoken in directing the utilities to undertake these larger capital construction projects. And when we said do a 100-year plan on filtration, plan for a resilient pipe under the Willamette, complete the reservoir deal, the council did not say and simultaneously degrade your work plan on all the other stuff you're doing to build your capacity. It was understood that it's cumulative. But we have been challenged to use every tool in our toolkit to get this under 5%, keep it under 5% as close to 4%. But it was never our intention to have the bureaus, after being directed by council to take on new work, to have to cannibalize existing work. And I know there's been some conversation about that. I think it's terrific for the public to have a better understanding of trade-offs. So if the Bureau of Environmental Services this year will actually be operating at inflation. The Water Bureau can't operate at inflation because the council has directed it to take on a lot of responsibilities that push it above the rate of inflation. The combined rate increase, though, can come down well below 5%, and using rate stabilization funds and other tools, we could shade that down even lower. But I want to be clear, neither the mayor nor I contemplated that the bureaus would have to degrade their existing CIP or operating budgets in order to also meet the requirements of the new regulatory requirements that the council has placed on them. And I ask you to consider that as you are evaluating budgets.
I think that's great insight. Speaking for two left-handed economists up here, we believe in the word choice. And you can't necessarily have it all. It's not an end. It's a choice of maybe delaying something. And perhaps if indeed you expect to put together your infrastructure and you want to take 50 years to replace that, that's good. You don't say, well, maybe I could do it in 20. Those are the kind of choices that we look at that aren't regulatory at all. They are good professional financial choices, and I think that's where the pub's coming from.
Good, thank you.
Could I add? And I hear what you're saying, and I agree, but I also think Alan makes an important point. What we've asked from the bureaus is in delivering their in delivering their budgets, that we have some idea of priorities, and maybe even more so that we have, as you put it, trade-offs. So if we're going to pursue a $300 to $500 million filtration project, what does that mean in terms of trade-offs? And I would say in recognition of the water department, they did exactly that. They did prioritize their operating budget for us, and I think that helps the pub have a more deliberative and robust discussion of what's coming down the pike in terms of the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I just want to throw in one comment and just say, thank God for people like you who want to step forward and be part of this process, to have people who are willing to really get into the nitty-gritty of the operations, the nitty-gritty, the budget process, open up and converse throughout this dialogue as we define what our priorities truly are. I'm really grateful that we have people who are willing to take the time and the energy. And I'm absolutely 100% certain you do not do it for the money, because there is none. And I just want to keep reminding people as they listen to this commentary, this is a group of volunteers. These are people in the community who have an interest in these issues and are willing to spend some time working alongside the City Council and representing the interests of the community and being one more set of eyes on the process. And I'm really grateful for it. And I always enjoy the testimony you provide, particularly during the budget process, but certainly as we were discussing some of the capital construction proposals as well. Thank you both for that important report.
Mayor, I move the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Any further comments? Please call the roll.
Daly.
Thank you for the report and for your service. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner Fish, for conceiving this and for bringing back public trust in the utility bureaus with the assistance of the Public Utility Board. It's certainly achieving even more than I thought you were going to. Particularly want to thank those who are retiring from service: Gwyn Johnson, Julia Pearson, Janet Hawkins, Cindy Dietz, and Marie Walkovics, and to Kendra Smith, who was the co-chair. And so the fact that you're so established people are now rotating off, having completed their service, is another testament to the need for this body. I particularly appreciated in your report that you included all of the previous letters that you've sent over the course of the year. While I read them as they come in, it's helpful to have them all compiled so that the public can see them as well. And that was, it also kind of reminded me of several of the ways that you've provided guidance, one of them being about the equity positions. And I appreciate that you have supported Commissioner Fish in making the resources available within the Bureau without asking for extra to prioritize equity. And I agree with your urging for a citywide conversation, because I want to see all the bureaus doing that. And thank you again. Aye.
Fish.
Well, Alan and Colleen, thank you very much. We deeply appreciate the partnership. 5.5 years ago, when then Mayor Hales assigned me both utilities, and that was somewhat of a surprise to me because there had not been an immediate precedent for that. And it turns out many, many years ago, Dan Saltzman briefly had both utilities in his portfolio. But when the then mayor said, I want you to lead both utilities, I was caught a little bit off guard. A hearing like this 5.5 years ago, even to receive a report, would have been a full house. There would have been a lot of vinegar in the room, and I would not have been the most popular person in the room. And what I deeply appreciate since then, since we weathered the storm on the Water District, since we did the Blue Ribbon Commission, since we adopted some new policies, since we went back to the public and showed them that we can be trusted to focus on basic services, since we have come now close to resolving the lawsuit that's been hanging over us. What I appreciate is, over this period of time, we've been helped by people like you in restoring some public trust in how the utilities run. And your report and your independent guidance is crucial to maintaining that public trust, and for that I'm very grateful. Aye.
Weaver.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Alan. This is very well done. I vote aye, the report's accepted. Thanks for your hard work. Colleagues, I'm going to go through the 2 second readings before we get to the final time certain. Could you call item 1333?
Amend street vacation ordinance to replace certain conditions and add conditions applicable to the vacated portion of Southwest Madison Street between Southwest 10th Avenue and Southwest Park Avenue for the Rothko Pavilion at Portland Art Museum.
Colleagues, any further discussion or questions on this item? Please call the roll.
Udaly.
Well, I wasn't here last week, as all of you know, but I have reviewed the item and the testimony. I would say was almost equally split between those for and against, maybe leaning a little more towards the against side. And our constituent contacts to my office leaned more in the for side. I was especially compelled by the testimony from a woman who is 93 years old and who's been volunteering at the museum for 40 years, which is pretty close to half her life, and has recently developed a mobility challenge, and she shared her challenges and frustrations with accessing the museum, as well as testimony from the docent who leads tours for visually impaired and blind visitors. I'm really excited about the potential of this, of the pavilion, both to overall accessibility and the user experience for all visitors to the museum. I understand there's some resistance and cynicism in the community. I listened to that carefully, and I trust that the museum is operating in good faith, and that we as a council will be here to ensure that the commitments to the community are upheld. So I'm very pleased to vote aye.
Fritz?
Well, I very much appreciated everybody who participated in the public hearings, both in the spring and last week. People who came believing they could make a difference, even though it seemed certain that the approval was going to be given. It's very clear to me that the benefits to the Art Museum are obvious and many. The benefits to the community of closing off the right-of-way are undetermined at best. And I am disappointed that we're not able to get to more of a win-win situation. We've already got one super block on the next 2 streets over, and it's difficult to find one's way to the streetcar except by going on the main thoroughfares, and those are not pleasant places to walk or go with a wheelchair or a stroller or other places. And although I appreciate the stated intent to make this enclosed space welcoming, the current space is welcoming. The Sculpture Plaza, I think, is beautiful. It's a place where people can sit and reflect, and that really entices people to go inside because of the sculptures that are visible to people walking their dogs through that plaza. I do hope that as the project moves forward, the museum will consider and implement living wages for its custodians and security staff, some of whom we heard from last week in support. Again, it's very obvious that people care a lot about the Art Museum, and as do I. I am disappointed that this is the third cut that takes away from the street right-of-way that was established by the people who put together the City of Portland. I do appreciate Brian Fariso and the Art Museum to continue in their dedication and in their stated willingness to embrace community members from all walks of life and from all parts of the city, because for me this should still be a place that is used most by Portlanders, while still recognizing that the Art Museum is a regional and international draw. So unfortunately, I'm not able to support this decision, no.
Fish.
Well, we've had a really, I think, robust and thoughtful discussion about this issue, and I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to share their views. I have watched with a lot of encouragement the leadership of Brian Fariso transform this museum from what, from my point of view, used to be a little bit on the stuffy side to being now a much more accessible institution. And I say that with all due respect to your predecessor and to people who have served on the board. But the institution, to me, and I'm a member of, I buy a family membership, and I love the Art Museum. It felt to me a bit exclusive and a little stuffy. And I think this new director has done a wonderful job opening up this institution to our community, and I think he has captured a kind of the vibe of Portland in both what he's done in programming and in how he's made it more accessible. I was also not one of those who was much of a fan of the Mark renovation because even as an able-bodied person, I have found it extremely difficult to navigate the two buildings and to get to the film center, to get over to see the modern art in the Mark building, even to get to the Native American collection in the historic building. It's a warren of stairways and elevators and hallways, and it's really not very welcoming. So along comes this maybe once-in-a-generation opportunity to leverage private philanthropy to solve a fundamental problem of connectivity between two buildings. And I came to this with an open mind and had actually, frankly, had some skepticism. But what I have learned over time is that the public interest here, in my view, overwhelms what I think is the inconvenience this may cause to some people who live in the neighborhood. And that's because we have a chance to have an art museum which sets a standard for accessibility on the West Coast and hopefully beyond. And we have an opportunity through the commitment that the Art Museum has made to expand and protect the easement that gives people unfettered right to traverse the property beyond even the hours of the existing easement. And the amendment we adopted last week expands the hours to conform to the streetcar schedule. So what it comes down to is the fact that some will have to enter and depart a glass pavilion, whereas before it was open. To me, the public benefit is we finally have a main entrance to our museum. We have an accessible entrance. We have cured the circulatory problems which have dogged the historic building and the new building. And what I think for me ultimately is the tipping point as the liaison to Elders in Action and as the city's arts commissioner is I think this has a chance to further burnish our reputation. And I thought it was interesting, we began today by talking about Vera Katz and the fact that Vera Katz always looked long-term. She was looking out long-term about the river, she was looking long-term about the river district, she was looking long-term, and she was not thinking just short-term. This is going to require some change in the short term. I think on the long term, it has a chance to really provide a tremendous public benefit. And it's being paid for by very generous private donors who want to see our museum enhanced. So for all those reasons, today I'm proud to vote aye. Thank you.
Wheeler.
I think this is a great vision, and I'm appreciative of the fact that the museum brought it forward. We had about 4.5 hours of testimony in this room last week. I heard the arguments that people raised, but I am convinced that this is the right step forward. It addresses the connectivity issue, and we had a number of architects come in and talk about some of the original problems that this rectifies. We had people discuss the building flow situation and how the elevation of the first floor significantly improves access and flow through the building, as well as direct access to the elevators. This corrects what I think is an egregious problem with regard to ADA access in the current facility. There's no way of putting it differently in my mind. Currently, the way the Art Museum is set up, ADA access is through the back door. It is second-class access to what should be a world-class community facility. And this overcomes that effort. A number of the people who testified in opposition said they felt that we were supporting with a public contribution, meaning the right-of-way, a private and elitist institution. And to me, if people believe that, and by the way, I don't believe either of those things. I think it's very much a public institution, and we had a lot of people who are docents and volunteers and others share their experiences. The museum director expressed his support for free access, which he's already implemented, and other opportunities, particularly for youth. And he talked about how this new entry could be used as a better opportunity for youth to gather and begin their experience in the museum. If you believe that this is still an elitist institution and you believe that community engagement is not sufficient, I have an easy solution. Volunteer and help make this institution better. Rather than pulling your chair away from the table, turn it around and slide it in and participate in what is very much a public institution and has the opportunity to be one of the great museums in the United States of America. And Brian, personally, I just wanted to share my gratitude for what you have done. If to you it probably seems like a relatively long tenure, to me it seems like it's been a relatively short period of time. You have really begun this process of acknowledging that this has to be a community-based institution. Finally, a number of people mentioned security issues in the vicinity of the building as being a concern. And we heard from one of the security personnel. We also heard discussions around lighting. We heard discussions around security, and the museum has agreed to keep the hours of public access from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., which I think addresses a lot of the public access issues. But I also want to personally commit, as the mayor, I have said loudly and clearly, we need to address the livability issues in our community. We need to address things like drug dealing, littering, the disposal of needles in public right-of-ways, concerns people have around public safety. We are addressing those issues, and I will commit that as the museum goes forward with this project, we will continue to look at the issues that are in that immediate neighborhood to help make people feel safer. The fact that people said, I have to go through that existing public access point because I don't feel safe going the other way, that's a bigger problem than just whether or not we should build this entryway. That's a question about the broader sense of security in the neighborhood, and I think we need to collectively work together to address those issues, and I'm committed to it. So, as I said, it's a great vision. No great vision comes without some disagreement, but I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you, everybody. Next item, 1334.
Authorize contribution to the Northwest Transportation Fund to satisfy requirements found in Portland zoning code and qualify for a floor area office use bonus for the ESCO property prior to submittal of a land use review application or building plans.
Colleagues, any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. We'll go back to our second time certain, which is 1323, please.
Declare intent to initiate local improvement district formation proceedings to construct street, sidewalk, stormwater, and sanitary sewer improvements in the Southeast 80th and Mill Street Local Improvement District.
Colleagues, Commissioner Saltzman is out today. He asked if I would read an introductory statement on behalf of this item, so I'll do so. This local improvement district is to comprehensively integrate street, stormwater, pedestrian, and sanitary sewer infrastructure in a single project, stretching property owners' LID dollars and Bureau of Environmental Service ratepayers' LID dollars further. A great example of the city working together is what this is. This also includes our partners at Portland Public Schools and Bridger Elementary, a Title I school with a high proportion of low-income students who will benefit from this project and help our equity and our Vision Zero goals. Today we have PBOT's Capital Project Manager, Andrew Abbey, with us to give more details on the project. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. We are joined today by David Hammond, my colleague from the Bureau of Environmental Services, and Ryan Webb, an engineer from the Portland Bureau of Transportation. Ryan received his PE license earlier this year and is already making a positive impact designing LED projects. Joining Ryan on his left is Olivia Grenier, who made the trip today to join us from Corvallis. She will be graduating from Oregon State University next year with a degree in engineering and interned with PBOT last summer. She deftly handled every curveball that I threw her while she was scoping and estimating this project and responding to property owner concerns. She, along with David and Ryan, played key roles in helping put this project together, and I just wanted to show you some of the staff behind the scenes that help make these LED projects happen. So with that, Carla, if we can switch to the presentation, and I need your help to make this
F5.
F5? Okay, thank you. So the first slide here today is a picture of what Mill Street looks like. This project went on hiatus from an unsuccessful petition effort in 2006. Earlier this year, I received this plea from a property owner in what is now the proposed LID. We have been struggling for the last few years with who to talk to and address the crazy water pond we now refer to as Lake Mill Street. I've written countless emails to different city departments pleading for some help, but things don't go anywhere, so any advice you have would be great. You can see from this picture in the background of a traffic signal. That signal was recently installed by ODOT, and thanks to the partnership with ODOT, the property owners will not need to replace the curb ramps at Southeast 82nd and Mill to current ADA standards. As you can see, once you get behind the new vehicle detection loops that were installed by ODOT, you have a truly dreadful street. Here's what the father of a future Bridger Elementary student, here is a picture of a father of a future Bridger Elementary student going for a walk. This little boy's mother said, "We are trapped inside our property due to the standing water and no sidewalks, which forces us to climb through a neighbor's bushes with our son to get out. And when the time comes for our son to go to school, we will unfortunately have to drive 1 block because we cannot leave our home by foot." Moving on to the next slide here, Southeast Mill Street is among the 306.8 centerline miles of streets in the city that are paved without curbs. This is an example of one of those blocks. Montevilla's proportion of streets fitting this category at 14.1% is about 10% lower than the citywide average of 15.4%. 306.8 miles may seem like a daunting number, but keep in mind that 5 years ago, we had 2.1 more miles of these types of streets, so we have been able to slowly chip away at the backlog. I was asked by an elderly property owner who could not be here today and who is a caregiver to her husband to provide a personal story behind these statistics. She said, "My family and I are caring for my husband who is in the later stages of dementia. His caregivers often have to push his wheelchair down the middle of this road amidst the heavy afternoon traffic to avoid the massive puddles and potholes. It can be a rather unnerving experience for all concerned." But just quickly moving on to the next slide, I really want to thank Commissioner Fish for this. The catalyst for this project is the pending sanitary sewer replacement in Mill Street. But if you thought that a software program would have told PBOT and BES to work together on this project, you would be wrong. Earlier last year, I got together with the city engineer to grab some coffee and look at some current projects around the city. On our way back to the office, we found these utility locates on the street, and put in a phone call to BES and found out that they were planning to replace the sewer. So to BES's credit, they were willing to delay their sanitary sewer project for 1 year while we worked on a possible LID. The goal here was for BES to spend about the same amount of money that it otherwise would have been throwaway on trench repair. A 12-foot repair around the existing sanitary line shown in red on this diagram would temporarily result in a nice 12-foot swath of street, but over time it would crumble just like the pavement around it. And then the day after BES would do the trench repair, my phone would ring and people would ask me, well, why couldn't we just fix the whole street while the sanitary sewer was being replaced? Instead, we can apply that money toward the brand new pavement section as shown on the right while reducing the LID obligation for property owners. David, did you just want to share a couple of quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our project, I'll be here in the afternoon reading authorization to go out to bid for these projects. This is a small piece of one of those that we'll be able to package with the PBOT work and put out at a later time. The rest of the project will still go on schedule. And it'll be a good way to improve the neighborhood community in coordination with PBOT and get a much better final result than we would have got with a normal street repave and patch.
Thank you, David. And what I just passed out while David was speaking to you is I had a meeting with the City of Bend earlier this year. We were talking about infrastructure finance issues, and they had brought to my attention a missed opportunity in Bend where they did a major utility project on the east side of Bend, and they didn't try to put a sidewalk in at the same time, and they got quite a bit of blowback from the community. So when I got back to Portland and this project was taking shape, we thought we'd err on the side of trying to build the sidewalks in this area.
So Andrew, could you just interrupt for a second?
Yes.
I thought that when Leah Treat first became Director of Transportation that she had had similar, she actually had software in Chicago or somewhere else that she had worked where everybody entered, each bureau entered in their projects and it said, you know, red alert. Do we not have that yet?
We do have it. This one, just for whatever reason, kind of fell through the cracks. So we have a little more work to do on that, to be candid with you. So.
Well, actually, I think the other way of thinking it is at least we've got people who are doing thinking rather than machines that can sometimes not give us the answer we need. Thank you,
Commissioner. And I'll try to move quickly through the rest of it. I know you've had a long morning. So I just wanted to show you this next slide that we are going to, as much as possible, minimize impacts to trees. I showed a little concept diagram here on the right side of the slide of a way that we're thinking about possibly preserving those 3 trees that you see in the picture on your left. And I just wanted to share with you just a few excerpts of that testimony that's shown there on the slide. So we have a woman by the name of Kara Christensen who lives in the neighborhood. She feels unsafe walking a short distance to Bridger School and also to her closest park, which is Harrison Park. This is because of the lack of sidewalks, having to share the road with vehicles and bicycles, vandalism, graffiti, gang tagging, drug paraphernalia, dumping stolen vehicles, abandoned vehicles, and stripped vehicles. And you can see most of that on this next slide.
But again, just going back to the previous slide, the jutting out of the curb to save those trees would tend to diminish the amount of kind of gathering and cut through activity on that street.
Yes.
So that's really brilliant too. I hope you can make that work.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We are planning to do that. So this is 80th Avenue between Grant and Stevens, and this is going to be part of an amendment that I'll pass out. So this is an example of the 55.8 centerline miles of streets in the city that are unpaved. Montevilla's proportion of streets that are unpaved is 3.5%, which is about 1/4 higher than the citywide average of 2.8%. Again, this may seem like a daunting number, but keep in mind that 5 years ago, we had 59.5 miles of unpaved streets. So through the block by block, project by project approach, LIDs have been among the tools to reduce this backlog by 3.7 miles in 5 years, which is a 6.1% reduction citywide. Let me again provide a personal perspective behind these statistics. A nearby middle school principal said, "To watch my students come to school with wet shoes, knowing that those are their only shoes because they have a journey to school that involves walking through water is heartbreaking to me. I think it is an assault on their basic dignity to have to live like that because there aren't amenities that most communities take for granted. So this is a map of the LID as we started the discussions in September. We're proposing through this amendment to expand the LID so that project limits, instead of stopping at Stevens and not addressing those problems you saw on the last slide with pictures, would instead come down to 100 feet north of Grant Street. I also wanted to mention that as you look at the larger area, we are also going to partner with some other funding to upgrade some curb ramps so that we can address the accessibility issues to Bridger School, not just from the east with this LID, but from other directions as well. So here's a quick recap of the financing of the project. We did look at a number of funding sources to make this project go, including general fund capital set aside and fixing our streets funding. We ultimately settled on the BES funding with that partnership. So again, I'm deeply appreciative to Commissioner Fish and his bureau for coming through so that we can build a much better project for approximately the same amount of money. And then I just wanted to wrap up before I get to the amendment. I just wanted to show you this video, which I really think kind of shows what we're looking at. And doesn't seem to be, there we go.
Well, I got a phone call early this morning. Apparently, we had a fire in one classroom.
Wrong one. We'll switch over to the correct one now. Thank you.
There's really no sidewalks and there's a lot of cars parked on the side, and so we always have to walk in the middle of the road. And my mom is always nervous when we walk to school because some cars they don't pay attention.
We come 2 blocks to school. Half of our walk is unimproved road with 1-foot mud puddles. The other half of our walk is a block with no sidewalks and cars parked along the side of the road, which force us to walk down the middle of the road.
My mom drops me off at Gwen's house, and me and Gwen walk together to school. My favorite way of getting to school is walking with Ava.
Cerca de nuestra escuela aquí en Bridger, no hace mucho tiempo venía yo trayendo a mis niños a la escuela. Estoy parqueada en la calle Mill y es una calle que está totalmente en malas condiciones con pozos, hoyos con agua, lodo, y es muy difícil cuando vienen los papás con sus niños. Yo me parqué en la orilla de esa calle para traer a mis niños. Vine por ellos. Íbamos ya a la casa y estaba poniéndolos en el asiento, estaba poniendo su cinturón de seguridad. Cuando pasa un carro y yo estaba de espaldas, totalmente me baña de esa agua con lodo y sucia desde mi cabeza, ¿verdad? Quedé toda mojada y pues no podía creer que estuviera pasando eso, pero pasó. Entonces esto me mojó esta vez. Gracias a Dios no fue algo trágico, pero así como pasó eso, puede pasar un accidente. Porque
Well, there's a bunch of water puddles, mud puddles, and there's no sidewalks, so it's like really hard to get to school.
Okay. Tell me, how do you get to school?
With my scooter.
Yeah, tell me about your scooter.
Well, I like to scoot down with it, but I haven't really did it for a long time because it was free vacation.
We always walk to school because we live really close, but we're on an unimproved road, so it doesn't feel too safe. Sometimes the cars slide around. We feel a little nervous about that. But.
Well, it's pretty dirty. It's pretty dirty, and like at night after practice, after we have our basketball practice, like it's really pitch dark and we can't see nothing. And with the like roads being puddles and stuff, like you might get stuck in there and cars might not see you, so they might it's a possibility the car can hit you.
So we live on 80th and Division, in between Division and Clinton, so we don't have a safe, easy spot to cross to walk to school. We have to drive, we go down to 76th and take 76th. If we had a place that was like easily crossable, we would totally walk more.
You know, I ride the bus, so like, when the bus picks us up and tries to get out, there's a lot of car that's going very fast, so it takes a long time for the bus to even get in the lane and go. And then when we get around the school block, the cars are going really fast and it's really compact, so it takes a long time for the bus to get in. So most of the time we're kind of a little bit late. But the only good thing is the bus gets to our stop earlier, so we're actually not late.
And that concludes our video. I appreciate your time this morning. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Could you, could you just reiterate, homeowners will or will not receive a bill for this?
Homeowners are contributing towards the LID. We also have Portland Public Schools
I'm
contributing.
sorry, the average contribution will be?
For the average single-family home, they're generally running in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. There's $2.40 per accessible square foot.
Thank you. I'm sorry I had to walk out for the first part.
And there's some financing options available for that, right?
And we will also be offering a low-income deferral, and we're able to do that because of PBOT SDC funding, and then we can repay the PBOT SDC fund. I did pass out an amendment to take care of all of those streets, including all of those streets you saw in the video, so if you want to take a roll call on the amendment, then we would have a complete project.
How does the deferral program work, low-income deferral program?
I'm sorry?
How does the low-income deferral program work?
The way the low-income deferral program would work, sorry, Mayor, really didn't hear your question. So the way this would work is the final assessment, we haven't developed the agreement yet, but we used to do this many years ago with PDC, now Prosper Portland funding, where we substitute an LID lien for a deferral lien, and then upon the sale of the property, then that LID, or what used to be an LID obligation, is now a deferral lien that is due and payable on the sale of the property. There is interest associated with that, but it's a way that people can realize the benefits of the infrastructure and not have a financial hardship before they sell their property.
And let me ask a follow-up on that. So I support that because I obviously, we don't want to push an LID that forces people out of our housing. That's not the goal here. But then how do you capitalize the project up front?
We basically do that through all the other funding sources in PBOT SDC. So in effect, what we do, Mayor, is we temporarily overfund the project with PBOT SDC, and then as those deferral liens are paid back, we repay the SDC fund, and then we bring the SDC funding contribution in line with our typical 30% SDC funding ratio. So in effect, the LID and the BES funding is providing that 70% local match that we need to make this project go.
So my guess is that the improvements to the streets and the sidewalks, the drainage, enhances property value more than the individual property's contribution to the project initially. Do we have any data to support whether that's true or not? I mean, it's an impression I have, but I don't know if it's true.
So I haven't looked at it I have a lot of anecdotal examples from residential. I did do something called a cross-collateralization ordinance many years ago, where we did a LID on Northeast 148th Avenue that resulted in very significant increases to property value. I would just give you another analogy, which is on my own personal property, I had to hire somebody to deal with drainage coming from my uphill neighbor. I spent more hiring somebody with no survey, no set of plans, none of the formal stuff we go through on this, just simply to redo my backyard to handle the drainage problem. And I suspect from those pictures that you saw that there's property owners who are spending their own money trying to put in homegrown drainage solutions, and instead, we can build a very comprehensive improvement to deal with all of
And I'll stop here, but here's our chance with a new LID, or maybe even some of the ones we've recently supported. Let's do a data collection on this. And I understand it's a longitudinal study; it'll have to take years, but I feel like this is data we need. I need to know the answer to that question. Somebody will be sitting in this seat in 10 years, maybe somebody else, and they'll be asking the same question. But if we could definitively answer that question, and if it turned out to be true, that would certainly reduce whatever resistance might be out there. On the other hand, if we're wrong, then maybe we need to rethink the financing structure.
So, Mayor, can I just
Commissioner
make a
Fish
comment?
and Commissioner Fitz have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to move the amendment.
Second.
Amendments moved and seconded. Does anybody care if we call the roll right now on the amendment? Please call the roll.
Daly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The amendment's adopted. Commissioner Fish?
Just a cautionary flag. I think it's ultimately going to be extremely difficult to measure the benefits to property owners, Mayor, because we don't control the business cycles. This is currently property, these are currently homes in an area where, because of the hot housing market that's essentially moved into East County, these homes are going to be doing better now. A recession could hit, interest rates could spike, it could change the whole valuation that has nothing to do with basic infrastructure. So I don't know how you screen for that, for location, for timing, and for other things. The other thing I wanted to do, though, is just to answer something Commissioner Fritz asked earlier. I don't know the status of this project that Leah Treat was leading of putting all the inputs on one electronic database of public and private construction projects. So it would be public utilities, private utilities, everything else. What I do know is that within the constraints of the BES CIP, what this represents is senior leadership of PBOT, senior leadership of BES saying, here's an opportunity, let's pool our resources. So it's wholly opportunistic. And if it weren't for those conversations, this wouldn't happen. Being on a spreadsheet would not advance that conversation. This is just both sides saying, this is a priority, it meets a number of other values, location, safe routes, and we have to, the BES has to do this work, PBOT has to do the work, so we pick them. But it is on the opportunistic side, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Fish. I'd just make two quick points. One is last year, Council passed something called the CAPIA Value Capture Ordinance, Resolution number 37205. And we will be tasked with bringing our first report to Council so we can frame these types of issues like the question you've raised, Mayor. And I would also just point out, I really appreciate Commissioner Fish's comment because we do a lot of planning in the city and that's a good thing, but LIDs, as Commissioner Fish said, are very opportunistic. You really can't pick the group of property owners who step forward and say we want to do a project.
Okay, so let me politely disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think there is any process here that is so precious that it is exempt from our best faith effort around data collection. So let me take another stab at this. If in the real estate industry, people use comps, and they say you have a whatever, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house here, and you have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house here, and they can compare the relative value even in a current market environment. Can somebody tell me if you're on a street with crosswalks, paved sidewalks, and the street doesn't have foot-deep potholes as described in the video, what's the additive value to that house or to that neighborhood relative to the other that doesn't? I mean, I'm not saying I have the right answer, but I don't believe we should just shake our heads and say we can't ever collect that data or that information.
I just have to note this moment. I've served on this council for 9 years, and this is the first time someone has ever disagreed with Andrew Abbey. So, Andrew, I'm going to make a note of this. The mayor will be counseled on this. We hope it doesn't happen again. I will say, Ted, though,
respectfully disagree.
As someone who not long ago sold his house, I found the comps uniquely irrelevant because there was such a shortage of available homes and there were so many market distortions that the crappiest house in my neighborhood was valued above my house, was barely standing just because it was the only house available. So let's collect the data, but I think you're going to find the market forces make that data less than compelling.
Well, let's put it out there. Somewhere there's a smart master's student at Portland State or University of Portland or somewhere. I have to say that because Tom's in the room and he'll beat me. But at any rate, there must be a way for us to at least, before we walk away and say we can't answer that question, because there is a value proposition that we are making to this neighborhood. We are saying we want you to invest your hard-earned cash in this local improvement district, and they're going to say, why? And you're going to say, well, the sidewalk's there and the road's not potholed and it's easier, and they'll say, not interested. But if you could come to them and say, every dollar you invest in this returns $1.15 in additive value, give or take some standard deviation, I'll acknowledge that. That's a better value proposition. I'm just saying, I don't want to, we've already spent too much time on it.
The value on children, should we hold it on children, provide them sidewalks instead of?
I'm sorry, you have,
yeah.
Could you just come and say, we'll have public testimony and say it in the microphone because otherwise the captions can't get it. Thank you.
So Mayor, maybe just to wrap this up, I have in mind a way I think I can thread the needle between you and Commissioner Fish. I won't go into it today, but I have some ideas on some past projects that I could do some research on and do that. So,
all right.
Mayor.
Yes.
May I?
Please.
Okay. So the conversation about the impact on property values brings up a concern that I've heard from low-income residents from East Portland to St. John's, which is that they don't welcome improvements like this, but because they're concerned either with rents rising, property taxes rising, and displacement. So while, I mean, I understand it'd be great to be able to present this proposition to a homeowner as a net gain for them, we also have to sell it to other communities members who a net gain is not necessarily beneficial. So I'm glad to hear that there's funding options. What was it? It was a low-income deferral. But then do we help people in other ways who may not qualify for that low-income deferral? Like, do we offer someone who doesn't qualify? Maybe they don't have $10,000 or they can't qualify for a conventional bank product. What do those people do? But they don't qualify for our low-income deferral.
So all the property owners in this LID automatically qualify for financing, but what I'm saying is over and above that, we will offer a deferral as well.
If they can't secure financing?
Well, they don't even have to secure the financing, even if they, I mean, they will already have the option to finance through us, but if they don't want to finance because they're trying to put food on the table, that type of thing, then they can sign up for the deferral and not pay until they sell their home.
Okay.
I would just like to remind everybody that the city, the Environmental Services is putting in over $700,000 and Transportation's putting in over $750,000. So to a certain extent, it's irrelevant about where else should we be doing this, because we usually can't put that kind of money into a project like this. Also, Portland Public Schools is paying into it.
That's correct.
And just one other quick thing. The main thing is I've always felt that we shouldn't consign people to being stuck with third world streets in order not to have property values go up. So, thank you.
Thank you. Public testimony.
Yes, I show 5 people signed up.
Very good.
The first 3, please come on up, are Lars von Schneider, Heather Mandar, and Dustin Furseth.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lars von Schneider. I'm here with my wife, Heather Mandar, who's sitting back there. We are residents of the block that's in question. We personally live at 8058, and we've lived there for 10 years, and that's the entire time that we've been in Portland. We've seen the neighborhood change extensively throughout the years, and when we heard that this was a possibility to take advantage of the money that was being offered, we were absolutely ecstatic, because we love our house, we love the neighborhood, but as you've seen from the pictures, that's the one thing that I can point to that I just have all kinds of anxiety about the street and about the condition. We've spent thousands of dollars over the past few years to both fix and to prevent water coming into our basement, not necessarily from the street, but just in general. We can see that the weather patterns are changing, and that as more rain is coming, there is a chance that that would happen again. We support this. We think that the work that the various organizations have done have been amazing, and would love to see it go through. But of course, we want to have some sidewalks on our streets, but why should you care? And I think that the point that was just made that reminds me of a comment that a friend of mine made about 2 years ago, that he lives off of 50th and Southeast Hawthorne. And the comment that he made that really resonated with me was that everything that's east of 60th might as well be Afghanistan. And what he meant by that, I think, is that many people, especially newer residents, they get towards 82nd, they see streets like this, they think that Portland is not quite what they thought it was. So this is a chance for us to take advantage of the funding that's been provided to help the kids that have to walk to school, this is one of these efforts that I think that to leave this kind of money on the table would just be foolish, and we support it more than anybody could. So thank you for your time, thank you for having us here, and thank you for the chance to speak.
Great, thank you for being here. Would you like to go next?
Okay. My name's Hillary Barassa. I'm up next, but his wife was called. So anyway, I represent myself and my partner. We also live on Mill Street. I'm also a realtor, so I can speak a little bit to the values. I don't have any numbers to share with you specifically today, but the intrinsic value of what's added by this, this proposed improvement is so valuable, both to the students that go to Bridger. I mean, it's crazy pulling out of my driveway every day, worrying about these children walking up my street. I'm worried about them. I think they're worried about me, that I'm going to hit them, that they don't have a safe place to walk out of the puddles. They're weaving in and out of cars that are parked along our street, and people walking their dogs. It goes beyond the school. I mean, this has just been an unsafe street for a really long time. I've lived in the neighborhood for 12 years. I've been a realtor for 12 years. I've watched the Portland market go crazy, and it's going to be difficult to come up with numbers because the market is the ultimate driver. But what I can tell you is that if someone is looking for a house to buy, they have two similar properties, two comparable properties. One has sidewalks, one has safe streets, the other doesn't, they're going to buy the house with sidewalks. So putting a number value on it is difficult, but I can tell you that it does give value, and not only to the homeowners, but potential future purchasers. So.
Appreciate that. Thanks for that perspective. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dustin Furseth, and my wife Hannah and my son Sander was in some of those photographs. He's 18 months old, and he'll be attending Bridger Elementary that's also in the LID. I think Andrew and everybody did a great job of covering the issues. I think that's very clear. I just wanted to give a personal perspective, just that I think that our street is different than a lot because we have three things happening. It's a place for children because of the elementary school. It's a city greenway that's dedicated as a bike thoroughfare that connects Lincoln and downtown out to the 205. So we have kids and bikes, and then we have cars, whether they're there or not for a reason, going to school or just cutting through the neighborhood. It's a dangerous culmination in its current state. And when it rains, all you have to do is go out there anytime it rains and you'll see it. So I just think that the bottom line here is that we don't want to wait till anyone gets hurt. And I'm a homeowner that acknowledges that I will be contributing, and it's worth every penny from my standpoint. And when the dialogue that you were just having about property values, we've been having with the neighbors that were not on board, and people are coming around to that. Even long-standing neighbors are starting to see the fact that this is something happening outside of your property that will help the neighborhood, and it's worth your money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all three of you for being here. We appreciate it. Next three, please.
The last person I show is Rebecca Hamilton.
Did you want to say something on the record as well?
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is, do we want to?
Okay right now. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Hamilton. I live in North Portland. But I am an advocate for safe places to walk and roll in our city. And I'm a member of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, although today I'm here just representing myself. So I'm here to ask for your support of the proposed LID for transportation improvements in Southeast Mill and 80th Avenue, and particularly the amendment that extends the LID to Southeast Grant. The project would create safe, connected walking routes to two significant institutions, Bridger Elementary and the Slavic Church Emmanuel. And it would connect with improvements made by PCC earlier, so we could create a complete network of sidewalks in this neighborhood. Coordinating these transportation projects with planned sewer projects creates an opportunity for huge cost savings on a sidewalk network that this neighborhood would have little chance of affording on its own. Creating this LID and implementing these transportation projects now, when so much of the cost burden can be shared between bureaus, is possibly the only chance that this project could be done in the foreseeable future. So I certainly encourage you to allow the neighborhood to take advantage of this opportunity to build sidewalks for their kids at a price they could afford. I'd also like to encourage you to direct PBOT, BES, and the Parks Bureau to look for these cost-sharing opportunities, or to take a look into why efforts to do that already, why they're not as effective as they could be. These opportunities save taxpayers money, and they can make sidewalk infill projects possible in places where they would never otherwise happen. And finally, I'd like to share something with you. For over 25 years, the city has sponsored the Traffic and Transportation class. It's a class that was started by Earl Blumenauer with the goal of teaching citizens of Portland how to be effective community advocates, how to work cooperatively with government and city staff, to implement needed transportation projects in their neighborhood. I'm a graduate of the class myself, and I've been volunteering with the class for several years. So I wanted to let you know that one of the students, Amy Wren, a resident of Montevilla and a graduate of last year's class, was a driving force in bringing this project here today and in organizing her neighborhood to get behind this project. So I just wanted to let you know that your continued investment in educating the citizens of Portland and productive civic engagement through the traffic and transportation class continues to pay dividends. So in conclusion, please support the LID, particularly its extension down to Grant, so that we can make a complete sidewalk network in this neighborhood. Let's actively look for these opportunities for cost sharing through inter-bureau coordination, and let's keep supporting public education in productive, cooperative citizen engagement.
Ms. Hamilton, I want to do just a quick shout out for a former colleague. When Steve Novick had PBOT and he hired Leah, this was very high on their radar, this idea of collaboration with BES. And I'm very pleased that you also, in your testimony, acknowledged the benefit to ratepayers of aligning the work. So it's a win-win. And Andrew will tell us otherwise, but the senior CIP managers have been directed to look for these opportunities. We'll make sure that we're doing it at a high enough level. But this has now our third or fourth year of this being baked into PBOT and BES looking for these opportunities. But we'll follow it to make sure that we're seizing every opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Parks does too.
Thank you, everybody who testified. Please call the roll.
Udaley.
I just want to clarify for people in the room that my concern I expressed has nothing to do with my support of this LID. It's obviously a really excellent opportunity for the neighborhood. It's just that when we talk about increasing property values, we have to talk about the potential for displacement. And I hope we're about to adopt a comprehensive plan that includes 11 anti-displacement measures, which is wonderful. I'm just concerned about how we continue to be held accountable for those. So I'm happy to vote aye.
Fritz.
Usually when people stay 2 hours beyond the time that they're, actually 2.5 hours beyond the time that their item was scheduled to be discussed, it's because they're furious and want to speak against it. So I really thank you very much for still being here at 12:30, particularly our representative from the Pedestrian Advisory Council to live in a different neighbourhood and come and say what a good project this is, I think is evidence that people of Portland care about each other. I live in deep southwest Portland, and I've served on the council now for almost 9 years. Deep Southwest has similar streets compared with East Portland, very few sidewalks, and despite Andrew's best efforts to remedy that situation to the extent that can happen. I've never seen a local improvement district that is more commendable or more needed. I mean, particularly the frontage of the school being in such terrible shape. How did this not happen before? That's a question. I also want to commend former Portland Commission on Disability Commissioner Sue Stahl, who used a mobility device and was very active in promoting accessibility in the built environment, and I'm sure that this is something that gives her pleasure even now. And I also thank Andrew Abbey. We should not consign people to live on third world streets for fear that their property values will go up. We want people in all parts of the city to have safe, accessible streets and to have access to opportunities that create a better life and a better future for them and others. Aye.
Fish?
Well, another superb piece of work by Andrew Abbey. I'm very proud of the work that BES and PBOT do to coordinate these projects. It was not always the case. I want to thank the folks who took 3 hours out of their life or more to be here. We ought to have a system that says if you get heard at least 2 hours, if you get heard 2 hours over a time certain, we should pick up your parking tickets. But I don't have PBOT in my portfolio. You know, I have a 13-year-old at home. We're very lucky. His safe route to school is crossing the street in front of our apartment building and getting on a bus. And so I know he's safe going and coming. But looking at these pictures, this is not acceptable to our city, that young people have to dodge puddles and streams and other kinds of things and other safety hazards. So this is a great project, and I'm very pleased to support it. Aye.
Wheeler.
We can quibble about the data, and I'll always raise questions about data, but that's the minor point here. The larger point here is we have neighborhood streets and sidewalks, as Andrew said, that are not safe, and they are not up to standard, and they are not acceptable to this council, and they're not acceptable to the community. And so we need to find creative ways to be able to address these issues. And as has been stated by all of my colleagues, the larger issue here is safety, particularly for kids who are making their way to school. That is the larger issue and the more important issue. Andrew, as always, you're a diplomat and a statesman with a withering attention to the details and an ability to bring people together to support these kinds of transactions. And I know, having heard you discuss other maybe more contentious LIDs, this one is really masterful work. I want to acknowledge the Portland Public School System for their efforts and contributions to this as well, and the Bureau of Transportation and Commissioner Saltzman, who couldn't be here today, but I want to acknowledge his leadership on this important issue as well. This is a good roadmap for other LID discussions and partnerships around this kind of improvement in the parts of our community that desperately need it. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted as amended. Colleagues, we're now into the speed dating portion of our agenda. Could you please, Carla, read items 1335, 1336, and 1337 together?
1335, appoint Thomas J. John to the Portland Code Board of Appeal for a term to expire November 28, 2020. 1336, appoint Robert Bruen to the Electrical Code Board of Appeal for a term to expire November 28, 2020. And 1337, appoint Terry Glenn to the River Community Advisory Committee for a term to expire November 8, 2020.
Colleagues, I have invited all three of these appointees to attend today. All three had hardship. Oh,
Well, I'm your staff.
Well, okay, let me get through this and we'll see what we need. They all had hardships related to their employment, and we know that that is an important consideration.
Or
However,
opportunities.
or an opportunity, yes. However, they have all provided me brief statements, and I'd like to read these both in terms of what they do and why. The Building Code Board of Appeal hears building code issues that are appealed beyond the Bureau of Development Services Administrative Appeals Board. The BDS Administrative Appeals Board consists of the building official and managers and staff from BDS, the Portland Fire and Rescue, while the Building Code Board of Appeals consists of private industry professionals from a variety of designated backgrounds. The board provides an alternative to appealing code issues directly to the state. Thomas Wan is recommended to fill an alternate position fulfilling the membership category of builder. So he is qualified as a builder, and that is why he is on being appointed. The Electrical Code Board of Appeal hears electrical code issues that are appealed beyond the BDS Administrative Appeals Board, consists of private industry professionals from a variety of designated backgrounds as well. The board provides an alternative appealing code an alternative to appealing code decisions directly to the state. Robert, is it Brune?
It's Breeny.
Breen, sorry, is recommended to fill the membership category of journeyman electrician, which is what he is, and therefore is being appointed. The River Community Advisory Committee advises and assists BDS with development procedures and administrative guidelines for implementing Title 28, the city's code on floating structures. And I assume that means docks. Is that right? What's a floating structure?
It's docks. It's also floating homes.
Very good.
And anything that would support in a marina.
Excellent. The committee consists of industry professionals and floating structure community members. Terry Glenn is recommended for appointment filling a yacht club membership category. So that's it. I'll turn it over to you if there's anything else to add.
I don't have anything to add. You said what I was going to say. All of the commissions serve 3-year terms, and we're slowly but surely getting these commissions, their membership up. They were not fully staffed is not the right word, but we didn't have all the positions filled for a while, so we're slowly getting that up to the required number of
Great.
positions.
So if I'm at home and I'm listening and I'm so bored, I'm watching the Portland City Council on television, I'm thinking, wow, I really could be on one of these boards. Where does one go in order to apply?
One can call the Bureau of Development Services. We have several different boards and commissions, and they're all staffed by different managers. So you would want to just get in touch with BDS, and we can put you in touch with a list of all of our commissions and the contact person appropriate for
Commissioner
that.
Fritz?
They could also call 823-4000, and the staff at the information referral line would help them. We do now have a coordinated application within the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement, so that's also that's hopefully going to be a way to take it, make it easier for community members to apply and for staff to process those applications.
Yes, that's great.
Great. Any further questions? I'll accept a motion on 1335.
So moved.
I'll accept a motion on 1336. Oh, did you second that, Commissioner Udaley?
Second.
Thank you.
How about I move them all?
Thank you.
I'll second them all.
Perfect. Please call the roll on 1335, Carla.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for being here. Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The report's accepted. The nomination is accepted. 1336.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Mayor, I understand your reasoning for putting these on the regular agenda. I did wonder about the 15 minutes requested for each of them. I thought that was a bit generous.
That was generous. Agreed.
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The report is accepted and the appointment is accepted. 1337, please.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The report is accepted and the appointments are all approved. Thank you to our appointees and thank you for bringing us some very good people. Next up is 1339.
amend contract with Radler White Parks and Alexander LLP to extend expiration date and increase contract amount by $150,000 to provide additional on-call legal assistance to the Spectator Venues program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Susan Hartnett, Spectator Venues Program Manager. It's a little close. The contract in front of you is actually a contract with the City Attorney's Office, but the costs are paid out of the Spectator Venue program, thus my appearance in front of you. This contract provides outside legal support for our work to amend the agreements related to Providence Park, the city's stadium, in relationship to the planned expansion, which you will be hearing more about next week. We are looking to add dollars to the contract, $150,000. We're also looking to extend it until June 30th, 2019, which will get us through the anticipated 2-year construction. We're not expecting that there will be any legal issues during that period of time, but we figured we might as well provide that capacity within the contract. So it's a pretty straightforward amendment to an existing contract. Happy to answer any questions.
Colleagues, any public testimony on this item?
No one signed
Please
up.
call the roll.
Daly.
Thanks for being here. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, obviously, we need to have good counsel to help us get to the end of this contract. It is unfortunate that the other party was not able to help us get to a speedier conclusion. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. 1340, please.
Accept Amendment 4 of Contract Number 30005394, which states the guaranteed maximum price of $147,350,000 from Howard S. Wright Construction Company for the Portland Building Design Build Relocate Project.
Colleagues, we're here to review and accept the guaranteed maximum price contract amendment for the Howard S. Wright contract to reconstruct the Portland building across the street. The project is on budget, with the total holding at $195 million as set by the council in 2015. Howard S. Wright has started construction, and this amendment will guarantee they deliver this project as defined in the contract documents for a maximum of $147,350,000. This includes the scope already completed, such as the design, pre-construction services, and build-out, and move to the temporary locations, as well as the construction for the Portland building and the move back in for the employees. The city is directly contracting and providing services which make up the remaining portion of the project, such as the owner's representative, project management, specialty consultants, telecommunications, leases, and utilities. The $195 million budget also includes additional owner-controlled contingencies to manage any unforeseen conditions currently not in the defined contract documents with Howard S. Wright. Joining us today is obviously our Chief Administrative Officer, Tom Reinhardt. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Council. For the record, Tom Reinhardt, CAO. We're asking Council to accept the guaranteed maximum price today. I think the Mayor did a fine job outlining it, and now that this is, I think, the 4th consecutive time that I've been in front of this body over the lunch hour in which you are fatigued, I'm just going to do a very brief overview. The budget has 2 primary sections, the contract with Howard S. Wright and then the owner's responsibilities, and we are the owner. So the way to understand guaranteed maximum price, in my opinion, is that now we have a contractual arrangement which cannot be exceeded, which guarantees that the city's risks on the hard construction costs are borne by the contractor. To reiterate one point that the Mayor said that's important, we did shift some of the technology work, some of the temporary space costs and other costs from the owner's responsibility to Howard S. Wright, which is why the original cost is a little higher, but we are still tracking below the $195 million budget item. We're on track for LEED Gold certification. We have very aggressive equity goals, which I know I briefed all your staffs on, and the Community Oversight Committee continues to do an excellent job working with myself and my team to unearth issues and address them as they come up. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Tom, this is like mind-bogglingly detailed stuff here about all the systems. at some point subsequent to the hearing today, could you just send me an email telling me where we would find the key references to the work we're doing on all the upgrades to the restrooms?
Absolutely. And one point I want to make on the complexity is that we also have lists of literally hundreds and hundreds of items that if we do need to tap into contingency will be up for consideration. So I'm confident the team has looked at every potential item that could be reduced if we need to do that to stay under your budget direction.
Tom, thanks for watchdogging this and keeping it on time and on budget. It's a lot of work to go.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else, colleagues? This is a report. I'll accept the motion.
I move to accept the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll, caller.
Udaley.
Well, thank you, Tom, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Aye.
I stand corrected.
Fritz.
I was actually thinking it's the mark of an excellent staff person to say good morning when your boss says good morning when it's nearly 1:45. So nicely played. Thank you very much for your work on this. Aye.
Thank you.
Fish.
I was actually going to take you to task today because the other day I walked across the street, tried to get in the building, and someone had put up a wooden wall. What the hell is going on here? But
they won't let me in either, Commissioner, if that's any consolation. It probably isn't. You keep better company.
Thanks for your good work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The procurement report is accepted. Thanks for your great work. Last but not least, item 1341.
Accept bid of Wildish Standard Paving Company for the Burgard Lombard at North Time Oil Road project for $1,754,560.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Larry Palat from Procurement Services. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Wildish Standard Paving Company for the Burgard Lombard North Time Oil Road project, $1,754,559.53. The engineer's estimate on this project was $2,635,000. The Bureau's confidence level was high. On May 24th, 2017, Council approved the ordinance number 188382 for procurement services to competitively solicit this project. I'm not going to go through the name again. The project was advertised on the city's electronic procurement system. Bids were opened October 24th, 2017. 3 bids were received, and Wildish Standard Paving Company is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $1,754,559.53. This is 33.4% under the original engineer's estimate, which in today's bidding climate is quite a surprise, a pleasant one. The project is a federally funded highway project, and as such, the city's standard goals of 20% for disadvantaged minority women and emerging small businesses is not applicable. Federal projects recognize the DBE or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise certification only. The Oregon Department of Transportation, as the grantor or project manager, fund manager, assigns a goal to the project for the disadvantaged business enterprises. This project had a goal of 10%, which is actually higher than our normal goals. We usually see goals in between like 4 and 8% as they come forward from ODOT. So, and PBOT's been asking for higher goals, and they've gotten them. On this one, we got 10%, which, like I said, is kind of for ODOT to give us 10 is kind of significant. There is a total of $423,910, 24.1% committed subcontractor participation for the project, of which $176,400 or 10.05% is committed to 5 disadvantaged business enterprises. Wildish Standard Paving is located in Eugene, Oregon. They are not a certified disadvantaged minority women or emerging small business contractor. They do have a current City of Portland tax registration account, and they are in full compliance with the city's contracting requirements. If council has any questions relative to the procurement process, I can answer those, or I believe Winston Sandino from PBOT is here, I think. He said he was going to be here.
Or was. Okay.
Okay. Well,
I have a question.
I'll do my best.
Normally, your excellent reports tell us exactly what was subcontracted out for the disadvantaged businesses, but this report doesn't. So can you tell me, A, why it didn't, and B, where is that? What kinds of work is being done?
I can tell you the firms. It does not specifically identify what their scope is.
And is that because it's an Oregon Department of Transportation-led process, or what?
Well, yes. ODOT reviews all of the subcontractors as they're presented, the DBE certified firms. They confirm their certification, put in everything in their format, and then we know exactly what is committed for the disadvantaged, which is the only certification recognized. I can tell you that there is Chick of all trades, which generally speaking is flagging, Brothers Concrete Cutting, which seems kind of self-evident. Igami Construction, honestly, I don't know what their scope of work is. Bent Enterprises, same thing, and Faison Construction, whom we're familiar with, is in there too. The total there is, as I said, it's $176,400 between the 5 firms.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Commissioner Fritz moves, Commissioner Fish seconds. Any further questions? Please call the roll.
Udaley?
Thank you for the report. Aye.
Fritz?
Thanks to both you and you for your perseverance and being here, and also the person who waited all morning. I saw you at the back. Would you like to just come up and so we can thank you properly for being so patient and then needing to leave for 2 minutes? Give us your name for the record, please.
Yes, Winston Sandino. I'm a project manager for PBOT.
And thank you for being here. It's such a good project. We didn't have further questions, so I'm happy to vote aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Great report. Thank you. Aye. The report's accepted. We're adjourned till 2 p.m.
Thank you very much.